Hey everyone, Screenplay Archaeology host KiramidHead here, and I just want to do this intro to get my usual batch of plugs out of the way. So if you like this show and you're interested in the subject matter, be sure to check out the Shelved podcast. And if you like this subject matter, but if you're interested in hearing these scripts read out line by line, listen to the Table Reads podcast. If you like this show, and you want to follow it, check us out on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter, and Blogger, and places like that, the social media pages. The show is on a bunch of different platforms. It is on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Google Play Music, among other things. So yeah, go ahead and leave a review on one of those platforms, and if I can find it, I will read it out on the show. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to send an email to screenplayarchaeology@outlook.com. And if I don't get back to you immediately, it's because Outlook's app is kind of crappy and doesn't always notify me about stuff. So my apologies for that. And that's pretty much it. On with the show. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Screenplay Archaeology podcast. I'm your host, KiramidHead.
And I'm EpicCandle, back by the vote of none.
The vote of me.
Yeah.
And maybe that one guy who commented on you on the Clock Tower episode.
Way back when, yeah.
Way back when. If he's even still listening, I don't even think he showed up for the Uncharted episode, which was right after. Or almost right after. But yeah, today we're going to be doing we're going to be revisiting an episode I did a couple years ago, almost to the year, because it was that February? Yeah, that was February, so we're about a year and 2 months off from, wait, a year? 2 years. 2 years and 2 months off from when I did the first Tomb Raider episode where I covered those two early scripts, and I've since gotten two more, and EpicCandle,
right,
who is probably a bigger Tomb Raider fan than even I am, if I'm being honest.
Probably. Maybe.
Because you've played more games than I have. I've just played 2013 and Rise.
Okay, if those are your only ones, then yeah, I've played way more than you.
Yeah, you said you played the PS2 games?
A few. I can't remember them right now, but yeah, I did play a few of them, then all the new reboot ones, and then I think there was the anniversary and those sort of things. Like, not the really first ones, because I didn't grow up with a PlayStation, so I couldn't play the really first ones, but yeah, most of them, I think.
But yeah, there was that trilogy that came out in the PS2 and the PS3, which I almost got because over here we got, well, I say over here, I mean on the PlayStation, we got Rise late, and waiting on that, I kept looking at the HD collection of that PS2 era series going like, should I get that? I never did.
Okay.
Especially since HD collections can be a bit of a gamble, unfortunately.
Sometimes, yeah.
I got lucky on my first two with, the heck were they called? Oh, it was the Eco collection and the Metal Gear Solid collection.
Yeah, those are pretty solid. Though, with Eco, they could have used less bloom. Just saying.
And Shadow of the Colossus, Jesus.
Yeah.
The 13th Colossus, you were fighting the Bloom more than the Colossus. At least when we were playing it, we were playing it that last time. At least I never remembered having that much trouble with it before. But to get on topic, yeah. I've since acquired two more early Tomb Raider scripts, and the thing that's interesting about it is that these are all by writers who are credited on that first Angelina Jolie movie, but the scripts are basically nothing like it, and there is a story to that which I'll get into as we go along.
Oh, goody.
And so the development of the movie is that the games were a smash hit in the 90s. I think it was after Tomb Raider 2 is when they started working on it. And it ended up at Paramount, and there was a script by Brent V. Friedman, which I did in the other episode. And despite being the writer of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, his script was actually pretty decent, I thought. And it was built around El Dorado and had kind of an interesting twist on the whole El Dorado thing. And it's not the same twist from the first Uncharted that the later Tomb Raider movie ended up ripping off.
Okay.
And then they went to another writer who she has a story credit on the movie, but I've never seen that script, so I can't tell you what it has to do with it. Probably basically nothing like these other ones. And then they brought in writer of Die Hard, Stephen E. D'Souza, to write a script, and his script was just not good. Like, it started off with this really interesting hook with the bad guys, and it just got boring, and I was going like, wait a minute, this is pointless, why are the bad guys even doing anything? And it had that bit of dialogue in it that I shared on the Discord where it said, you're not the woman I knew, Laura, the one whose heart wasn't just another muscle.
Fuck.
Which, even in context, that line is just like, why? And so some of his elements kind of, trickled their way into future drafts. So pretty much what happened is that he wrote it. That got the studio to actually move along with production, and they hired a director who was Stephen Herrick, who did things like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and some other stuff. So he signs on to direct, and he almost immediately goes with other writers, and that brings us to the first draft we're going to talk about, which is written by Patrick Massett and John Zinman. And the way they got involved in this was that they were pitching some other project to the producer, and they saw a cardboard cutout of Lara Croft behind his desk, and they went, what's that? And they went, okay, we'll pitch for that after he explained it. And despite being new writers who normally don't get these big budget kind of projects, they ended up, getting the job to at least write a draft. And what's interesting about these two guys is that they're mainly TV writers, and they did a show in the early 2000s which didn't last called Veritas the Quest, which was a similar sort of thing. It had this Indiana Jonesy kind of vibe to it, and they were globetrotting and finding these artifacts. I remember there was an episode with crystal skulls in a Nazi bunker, and it ended up getting canceled over getting preempted by wartime coverage, because that was when the Iraq War started up.
Oh, okay. I was just about to say that I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube if you want to look it up, and the badass, action hero mercenary character on the show is played by Arnold Vosloo.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he was cool. Like, I remember he there's like a thing where he like deadpans about being able to snap a guy's neck in multiple places or something like that. It was pretty funny.
Okay.
But I remember the show being decent for what it was. It's all on YouTube. I don't think it even got a DVD.
Yeah, I should probably check it out sometime.
I think it also had a very young Kobe Smulders in it, I think. I could be mistaken.
Ooh.
It was her or someone else vaguely like her who did bigger stuff later on. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But so to get into this script, the basic plot of this one is that basically Lara Croft she's competing with this group of like terrorists essentially to get the 3 pieces of this death mask, which is supposed to open the tomb of Alexander the Great. And there's this magical artifact inside that they want. And so it's kind of trying to beat them to the punch. That's basically the plot of this thing.
Yeah, and it's actually surprisingly tolerable.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, it's not bad. Maybe it's just compared to some of the other scripts.
Yeah, this is a bit like Damnation by Faint Praise, because in comparison to all the others, this is tolerable, but that's only because everything else is pretty shit.
We'll get to that.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay, and so it opens in Macedonia in 323 BC, and there's a holy man named Sophius who's leading a funeral procession, taking the golden coffin of a great king, and we don't find it out for like 15 more pages, but it's Alexander the Great. I'll just cut to the chase on that. And they're placing it in a tomb hidden inside a mountain, and they're attacked by this group of Persian soldiers, and they get the title drop out of the way early. Sophius sees them coming in, he goes, "Tomb Raiders."
Yeah, it's actually a bit weird, because when you think you'd probably go Grave Robbers first, but it's Tomb Raiders, like, okay, that's a bit forced.
It's not the worst title drop I've seen in these scripts.
It's not the worst, but still, it's...
The worst is yet to come. It's not great. Like, that's probably the worst part of this script, is that title drop right there.
Yeah. But don't worry, we'll get to the others.
Yes, we will. And so he seals the tomb shut, he traps a bunch of the servants inside, and we see all the booby traps kind of snapping into place and lining up and all that. And then he breaks the key, which is in the shape of a golden death mask. He breaks it into 3 pieces. It's like meant to break into 3 pieces. And he gives them the 3 horsemen, and he has them take them away, and they head off in 3 different directions as the battle commences. Nice short little prologue.
Yeah, actually, I think I sort of see what you mean, that they're mostly TV writers, because there's a lot of description here of the scene, like more than usual in the scripts you're giving me.
That depends on the writer. Like, it's very much some people are very descriptive, especially in older scripts.
Yeah, but it's like they take the time to establish shit a bit better than some others.
Yeah, they're not vague.
That,
so that's a compliment coming from you.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like, well, it's a tomb. Imagine a tomb. I'm like, okay, but what kind of tomb? Where? What century? What are we talking about here?
And also it has a cold open like a TV episode.
Yeah, and that.
And so it then fades to the present day, and there's 3 thugs led by a guy named Nico. They're in Antarctica exploring an ice cave, and Nico is talking about how she is here. And we cut to Lara Croft, who cuts her way into an ice cave. And by the way, they do not take forever to describe every aspect of her.
Yeah, which is refreshing in a way. And I think, because Nico is flanked by 2 other goons called Ari and Petri, and I think they're meant to be Finnish. Because those are Finnish names. They
don't say for sure, but maybe they are.
They don't know. Because I think Nico might be Greek, I think. I think there's something in the script that sort of implies that he might be, but I think Ari and Petri are meant to be Finnish, or they just plucked some foreign-sounding names from somewhere.
That is very possible. But also, let's not forget that these guys are not important at all, so you're probably putting more thought into this than they did.
Yeah, true. I mean, they're dead. They will be, but it's still a bit weird. Usually the goons don't even get names. They're just like Goon 1, Goon 2, Goon 3.
Yeah.
So there's just like, it's a bit weird. And I noticed this shit because there isn't a lot of Finnish stuff in mainstream media in the American side or anything.
Nope, and there's not a whole lot of Finnish movies either. I think we've watched all 3 of them.
Pretty much, yeah.
But no, with Lara, they basically just say, she's smart, she's beautiful. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, usually there's like 3 paragraphs describing the size of a boob in this script.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about the next script, but...
Yeah, we will.
We have to. But okay, so... She cuts her way into an ice cave, and she's finding a temple carved into the ice under a huge ice dome, and I'm thinking, what is this, the friggin' pyramid from Alien vs. Predator?
Yeah, I'm like, Antarctica. How the fuck would they build something like this in fucking Antarctica?
Oh, believe me, I have questions about that too. But also, I believe this is the first appearance of her ever-present chem flares.
Oh yeah, it's like, they keep calling them chem flares too, like, they specifically fixate on the chem flares. It's always chem flares, and it's everywhere.
I guess it's because there's a bunch of underwater scenes, so they kind of have to be chemical, but...
Yeah, but it's like, she has an unexhaustible supply of chem flares.
Yeah,
she just pulls them out of everywhere.
Keeps them in her ass.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I mean, in the original game, she reloads by putting her guns next to her ass, so...
Yeah, true.
And so, but yeah, she's making her way, she's here, she enters, and she's communicating with the guide at the base camp through a headset, and she can smell methane coming in from the walls, and she finds what she's looking for, which is a gilded chalice embedded in a column of clear ice in the center of the room, and I'm like, okay, how did they build that?
Because fuck us, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to go with it, because I mean, the games are kind of like that too.
They are, yeah, but there's like a acceptable range of just go with it, and some scripts like go way beyond that acceptable range, and I think this script is just barely in the acceptable range, if only by the fact that the games go just fucking whole hog sometimes.
I mean, this doesn't throw a T-Rex in there, so...
No, it doesn't. Or fucking Valhalla.
And so the column, it's surrounded by a metal disc mounted on the floor, which makes a bell-like ring when struck, which agitates the ice and makes the dome unstable. And then high-pitched interference exacerbates the problem, forcing Lara to turn off the headset. And so this was weird because I couldn't quite picture this. She covers the disc with a net. And so she walks on the net and then uses her pen to melt a hole in the ice column. And she's about to take the chalice when she spots a flint attached to its base and smells more methane coming from inside the column. And she hears the sound of the 3 thugs, who may be Finnish, maybe not, approaching. And when they get there, she's nowhere in sight. Nico grabs the chalice, scraping the flint, and that creates a fiery jet, which melts the roof of the dome. But fortunately, the big chunk that falls off is caught by the net, which she apparently moved up towards the ceiling, and they didn't see it?
Somehow, and I think even if she used some sort of a gun to shoot the net, hold things somewhere, wouldn't that agitate the ice too? Like, if sound is agitated, wouldn't the trembling from the thing lodging itself into the walls do something?
Yeah, I think it would. And so
Yeah.
she
So
emerges from, Laura, she emerges from, there's an icy river in the chamber, so she was submerging herself in water in Antarctica, and she's not dead.
Yeah, I think there's some mention in the script that it feels like there's like a natural volcanic thing. So
Yeah, they
it
say
might
that.
actually not be super cold water, but
Yeah.
like you probably shouldn't submerge yourself in water in Antarctica anyway.
No, you're right, they do say that. I had forgotten about the whole, it's a volcanic vent or something, blah, blah.
Yeah, but she still has to go outside, and she's not dry,
Yeah, and so,
so it's like.
Mhm. But no, she
And then
emerges,
one-
and she attacks, taking down Nico's 2 henchmen and getting into a standoff with him over the chalice. So yeah, the 2 possibly Finnish guys are dead.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, and here's the weird part, because Nico warns her that those stalactites can cut you in half. Like, what the fuck? What do you think they are? Razor blades?
And so she deliberately shoots the disc, which causes the temple to start to collapse, and she grabs the chalice, running for it as Nico, in fact, gets cut in half by one of those stalactites.
Yeah, it's like they're not guillotine blades. They don't just fall and cut you in half. They crush you.
Yeah, but you know what? But you know, and she didn't even stop to make a joke about him being half the man he used to be.
Yeah, I suppose.
Oh, you would actually like that.
I mean, kind of, but that's pretty basic. Like, you don't even have to think to make that kind of pun, and you could do more.
Yeah, but okay, yeah. So she has to outrun an avalanche caused by her shooting, riding one of the bad guy's snowmobiles and just barely managing to jump it over an ice crevice, and nearly losing the chalice before stopping her fall with a climbing axe. And I thought that was interesting that the climbing axe shows up because that becomes like your secondary weapon in the newer games.
Pretty much, yeah. It's your close combat special kill kind of weapon.
And you can choke people out with it.
Yeah, choke people out, crush their skulls, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
So
like
that was
it was interesting it showed up here.
It was, yeah, but my problem with this is that is the avalanche a wet avalanche or a dry avalanche? Because there's a difference in speed with those.
And of course you know what the difference is.
Yeah, I actually looked it up because I was really bothered by it, and a wet avalanche goes to about 20 miles per hour at most, which is like 30 kilometers per hour. And then dry avalanche, which is usually the really destructive ones, would go to about 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour. And even if you're on a snowmobile, that's really, really difficult to outrun. So it's like, if it's a dry avalanche, then fuck no. But if it's a wet avalanche, then yeah, she had a chance to survive.
We're talking about this after we just got out of a cave carved in the ice in Antarctica, a temple carved in the ice in Antarctica.
I know, but it's like this outrunning an avalanche trope is just so...
It's so Vin Diesel.
Yeah,
He did do that once, by the way.
Oh, Christ.
He outskis he outskis a CGI avalanche in the first Triple X.
No, you don't outski an avalanche. You have a better chance with a snowmobile, but even that's slim. But you don't outski an avalanche.
Or maybe
that doesn't work.
Or maybe he wasn't on skis. I don't remember, but it's Triple X. It's
It
not
could have
worth
been a
fighting over.
snowboard.
It's not worth fighting over. It's Triple X.
Yeah, it could have been a snowboard because snowboard is edgy.
Yeah, and it was
Cool.
very 2001. But
Yeah.
we're
We try not to think of the early North.
Yeah, which, by the way, the first Tomb Raider movie they made, incredibly 2001.
Yeah.
But now her team is about to leave on the helicopter when she comes walking out of a snowstorm, and they're all in awe of her, like, oh, she's so cool.
Yeah, so just to recap, she's soaking wet in Antarctica, outrun a avalanche, and somehow she's like, okay-ish, like, nothing's happened. She's fine.
And so we cut to Croft Manor over the chimes of Big Ben, just so we know we're in England, and where Lara has taken down notes about the chalice, and she says it's of ancient Greek design from somewhere in the 300s BC. And okay, this is my big stumbling point with that Antarctica thing. The ancient Greeks made it to Antarctica, built an ice temple, and we never go back to that. We never, comment on that, going like, hey, how did they discover Antarctica?
Yeah, that alone would be a huge archaeological, historical event to know.
Yeah.
And we never go back
Well,
at all.
Yeah, too bad she destroyed the historically important site.
Yeah, but I mean, they'd still probably able to dig something up.
It was all made out of ice, though.
Oh, so it's all melted now.
Yeah. Yeah, UNESCO is not going to be happy with her.
No, Lara should really just wear one of those GoPros so she can at least document the shit she destroys.
In 1999...
Oh yeah, it would have been too big.
Yeah, by the way, this draft is dated August... Let me check. August 26th, 1999. So yeah, the GoPro would have been like as big as her back then.
Probably. With a battery as big as her as well.
She just has to keep cranking it.
Pretty much, yeah.
She speaks...
Also, fuck you script writers for choosing this name for the butler.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say. She speaks briefly with Jeeves, the family butler, who reminds her of the date before she asks him to bring her Norton motorcycle, which she rides into London. Also, she asks him how the search engine business is going.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers Ask Jeeves, you're gonna think that's hilarious.
Yeah, but it's like, fuck you, fuck you.
Is it? Are you saying fuck you?
Yeah, the script writers, because I grew up watching Jeeves and Wooster. Fuck you, dude.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, you don't?
No.
It's Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry.
Oh.
Stephen Fry was the butler, and yeah, Hugh Laurie was Wooster, which would be the upper class twit.
Okay, I've never actually watched it. I may have seen it, I may have seen, the picture on Netflix, but I never actually watched it.
You really should. I mean, it's sort of a hit and miss kind of show, but, it's entertaining at least.
Well, name a show that isn't hit and miss, let's be honest.
Yeah, true. But this is it all depends on how much you care about the really small inconveniences of the British upper class.
But okay, so she drives into London on her motorcycle because motorcycles are extreme. And Lara, she visits the offices of her magazine, Croft Explorer, which covers all sort of adventurous expeditions. And so apparently she has monetized her tomb raiding habit and made a magazine about it.
And somehow she doesn't have the international whatever on her ass about all the destruction she does, all the grave robbing she does, all the tomb raiding she does.
It would have been really funny if there was a lot of dialogue going yeah, you have to talk to your lawyer about that lawsuit.
Yeah. There's just nothing. Everyone's just cool with it.
We're going to settle out of court.
Yeah. Fuck it, I got money from all the riches I have stolen and hawked.
Those parents, I put a bomb on their plane. Did I say that?
Yeah.
But she meets with her editor, Kate, and they hold a meeting where the next cover story is being decided on. And she picks a story about this poor guy who almost got killed by a tiger and took pictures of it close up.
Why? I mean, it was nice of her because he did get injured, but at the same time, it's what the fuck?
And it's she's looking at the other proposals for the cover magazine. She's going too obvious, tells the whole story. Let's go with the tiger guy. And he's like, okay, cool.
Okay, but it's her magazine. She can do as she likes, whatever.
And she records an interview for the BBC, and they're asking her a bunch of questions. We see a little bit of it here and a little bit of it later. I'll just go over both of it now. They actually ask her about, oh, you disrupt, and you disrupt these historically important sites. What do you have to say about that? And she just kind of brushes it off. And then they ask her, why she does what she does after surviving the plane crash that killed her parents. And she says, oh, it gave me a taste for risk. So she's an adrenaline junkie, basically, in this version.
Yeah. But, I mean, she'd kind of have to be.
I mean, it's a lot better than giving her, I got my daddy issues.
Yeah,
which is the entirety of the Angelina Jolie movie. Which is real life daddy issues getting played out on the big screen. And it's kind of fascinating to watch that part of the movie.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, just turns not as a movie, but just thinking about the meta of it is oh, so that's why this is in the movie.
Yeah.
And on her way out of the office, Lara gets met by Darius Bormont, a collector of antiquities who claims to have an appointment, despite there being no record of it. And he already knows about the chalice and offers to buy it. And Lara refuses, claiming it needs further study, and she says she's got to deal with the British Museum, and so she is at least somewhat above board. You know, she's not just putting it in her mansion, which I think she does in the old games.
Yeah, I think... Well, in the really old game, it's probably implied, but it doesn't necessarily show up in the mansion when you do get to explore it, because it's more of an obstacle course training thing.
Oh.
But, yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that was implied at some point, that she just keeps it for a personal collection.
Yeah, I think there was like Tomb Raider web series thing where they made little shorts with different kinds of art styles, and I think she was voiced by Minnie Driver, of all the people. And in one short, she mentions that she really likes pretty shiny things. So I think she's a bit of a magpie in that sense. So she probably does store them in her mansion somewhere.
Yeah, that is probably true. But I like this take, is what I'm saying. And then she also hints, she says, hey, I ran into some people who tried to kill me in Antarctica. You got anything to do with that? And that's the last time those three guys get mentioned.
We never knew ye.
And so she's back at home. She places flowers in her parents' mausoleum because it's the anniversary of their death. And she then goes through her training exercises, including shooting at targets, dodging lasers, and she swims the length of a pool underwater. So there's the obstacle course.
But I mean, she doesn't lock the butler into the freezer, so it's not entirely true as a game. So 0 out of 10.
And he's not Rimmer in this version, so that's a shame. I gotta say that best thing about that first Tomb Raider movie is the fact that Chris Perry shows up playing the butler. And he has a shotgun. So later that night, she's discussing her interview and magazine business over the phone with Kate, and interacts a bit with Kate's daughter, who calls her Auntie Lara, and we get this thing where it's like, ooh, what if she had a normal family life, blah, 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 which thankfully they don't dwell on.
It's weird because the kid's line is mentioned in parentheses, pure sugar. Hi, Auntie Lara. It's like, what?
I guess they wanted Mara Wilson.
Probably.
Hi, Auntie Lara. I'm going to kill you with my psychic powers.
Anyway, then shit starts going down.
Yeah, and so there's a shadowy figure sneaks onto the grounds and messes with a power box, and so she's walking around her manor, and then the power goes out and the emergency lights come on, so it's the Starship Enterprise. And she ducks into the armory, grabs a pair of 45s, stalking a masked intruder through her obstacle course. But she gets him at gunpoint, but a second intruder enters and places a gun to her head, and then a third enters with Jeeves as a hostage, forcing Lara to give up. So it's like, I guess she does like the butler after all. She's Batman.
Pretty much.
And so Lara and Jeeves are taken to her study, where they're met by Darius, and he smashes the chalice, retrieving a piece of the death mask from the intro that was inside it, and his archaeologist companion, who's named Raymond, he authenticates it. And Darius, he's like, okay, you found this thing in Antarctica, and you put me on the trail. I appreciate the effort you went to, and I wouldn't be here without you, so I'm gonna let you leave. Gonna let you live, but I will destroy you and all you care about if you interfere again, and he just leaves. And I actually that's the thing with Darius in this, is that I actually kind of think he's a decent villain. I just think we could have gotten a little bit more of him.
Yeah, I mean, for a villain from the late 90s, he does get a bit more of a rounder characterization, in a way. Like, he's not a mustache-twirling evil villain, even though he is kind of evil, and we'll see more as the script progresses. But it's like, he does shit that doesn't necessarily serve him, in a way.
Yeah. And he has like this almost weird kind of code of honor as well that you kind of see. And he's not your stereotypical bad guy, really. Like, we'll talk about that a little bit as we go along.
Yeah, it's like he is a villain, but he's a different kind of villain from what we'd usually see in these kind of movies.
And Sue, Lara, she's gathering up pieces of the chalice, and she notices that the mask left an impression on the clay, and she reconstructs the pieces, figuring out the inscription that was on the piece of the mask, and I think that's really clever.
Yeah, I'd have to give it that much. Like, that is clever, though I'm trying to figure out how big would the chalice be if it hides, like, 1/3 of a death mask? Because human faces aren't that small.
Yeah, but here's the thing. because I read the other draft before I read this, I think. That's way bigger of a problem than that.
Oh.
We'll get to that.
Okay, but I mean, still, I could have done with some sort of reference on how big the chalice actually was, because when I think chalice, it's something kind of small in a way.
Yes, and so, I have my entire rant about that on the next script, so we'll save that.
Oh, good, we're saving it.
Yes, we are.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah. Oh, wait, okay, I won't make that joke. While driving.
Okay, but yeah, anyway.
Let's get back to the story.
Yeah.
So
I mean, okay, yeah, I'll give the script that much. It was a clever way to see the indentations in the clay. Okay, that's one. You get one.
And so while driving to the airport, Lara talks to Kate on the phone, telling her that the mask is a piece of Alexander the Great's death mask and that the whole thing is the key to his tomb according to legend. Now, I want to stop and say this. The whole Alexander the Great connection and there being a big part of it being this golden death mask that comes from the Stephen E. D'Souza script, but it goes in a very different direction here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along, but that's something that's been maintained from that version. And in fact, the Alexander the Great thing got cut out of the first movie entirely when they went to rewrite it. But when they did the second movie, they brought the Alexander the Great element back in, and so he ended up getting a story credit on that movie.
Okay.
And so the inscription points her to Alexandria, where she thinks the next piece may be hidden, and asks I'm mixing up my words here, and asks Kate to have a case of rubies and gold coins sent to her hotel in Egypt, because she goes places where they don't accept MasterCard, I think is what she says.
Yeah, they don't take American Express.
So she's accounting for the need to possibly have to bribe somebody in something they can't trace.
Yeah, they actually, the list is 50 pounds worth of uncut rubies, no more than 2 carats each. Another 70 in gold pieces, Krugerrands if possible. And it's like, that's a lot. I'm like,
are you buying the Krugerrands from the bad guys from Lethal Weapon 2?
Yeah, but that's 50 pounds worth of uncut rubies. Like, fuck me, where did you get those?
Also, I should say Alexandria makes a lot of sense for her to go there because that was one of the big cities that Alexander built in Egypt.
Yeah, hence the name, methinks.
Well, in fact, he actually built cities all over the place and they were all called Alexandria.
There we go.
Bit of an ego.
Just a little bit, but then when you conquer half the known world, you kind of get to have an ego in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of earned it. And he did get the Egyptians to declare him a god, so.
Yeah, there's that too, yeah.
So she flies down there and she meets with American archaeologist Justin Mars, who's there on a dive. And she wants his help and wants to examine a Greek garrison he found there a while back, but he doesn't want to get involved as she kind of cheated him out of a share or something, and she abandoned him after an expedition some years back. Despite the two of them, they became quite close, and so he's kind of understandably pissy about that. And he relents when she mentions the tomb of Alexander.
Yeah, I think the implication is that they banged, and then Lara left, and then now he's...
And she left without even giving as much as a word. She just kind of left him on the mountain, I think is what he says.
Yeah.
And she took the artifacts without letting him know, she didn't cut him in on the deal. Which is a much better character motivation than Daniel Craig and his goofy American accent in the first movie, where it's just I don't like you for very vague reasons, and she's kind of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, they tried at least in this script. Good on you guys.
And you don't have Daniel Craig doing an American accent, and it's not like Knives Out where it's intentionally goofy. It's just oh, that's him when he talks from off camera. What is that voice?
Yeah, I mean, he tried, but in all honesty, they just could have made his character British or South African or whatever. It didn't have to be American, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So yeah, that's weird. And so, he's intrigued by this search for the tomb of Alexander. And so they look over his research and Lara spots a tunnel leading off from the garrison. And he says, oh, that's a viaduct, which is supposed to bring fresh water to the troops. And so they talk about how fresh water was also used in purification rituals. And that means there could be a hidden temple belonging to Sophius somewhere down there. And they talk about how Sophius was one of Alexander's big, right-hand men. And he was this huge, religious figure and stuff like that. He was very important in Alexander's empire. Yeah. And so they head to the garrison dig site, only to find that Darius and his men have gotten there first. And Darius spots Lara, forcing them to flee. They're oh shit, they're getting shot at, I think.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. They just noticed Lara and shoot immediately, which is okay. Yeah, fine.
And so they end up at the library at the local antiquities museum where Lara gets a call from Kate, who has uncovered information on Darius, and we find out he's from this wealthy family of Greek descent that lives in Luxembourg, and he like went to college at Athens University, and he became involved with these groups that want to restore the Greek monarchy, and he started working with terrorist groups in order to do so, and he's also descended from the royal house of Macedonia, which makes him a relative of Alexander, so you get the idea that he thinks he's reclaiming what belongs to him.
Yeah.
And he wants to restore Greece to its former place on the world stage and something like that, which is an interesting idea considering how Greece in the news nowadays is basically like, wow, this place is in bad shape.
Yeah, pretty much. But at the same time, it's like, I think that trying with the villain again, like they're trying to give him more character than usually.
Yeah, I think we just need a little bit more, I think, and he'd be better.
Yeah. But I mean, this is already a bit more than usually, because usually it's either he wants money, he wants fame, he wants whatever. It's usually not this kind of motivation.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more interesting than your standard 90s movie.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And so Lara, she continues to check their information for a backdoor into the viaduct and comes across a tiny seal on the reproduction of the mask inscription, which looks like an image of the lost lighthouse of Alexandria, which is on the bottom of the harbor. And so Justin agrees to go with as long as he gets 30% of the proceeds as well as a share in the publicity, and Lara's like, okay. And they dive down to the now sunken base of the lighthouse, and they find the entrance, which they have to like combine their strength to open it up. And Justin gets hit by a blast of air, which shoots him far away, and he can't enter before it closes again, so Lara has to go inside by herself. And she surfaces when she's inside, finds the viaduct tunnel, and follows it. So that's our first sort of underwater sequence. I believe there might have been a chem flare or two in there.
There probably was, yeah, at least one, probably two.
And so she makes her way down the viaduct, and she bumps into Darius and his men, and ducks down the side passage, laying down suppressing fire with her handguns as she goes, and comes face to face with a statue at an apparent dead end, but it turns out to be a false wall. And so Darius catches up to that point, and he seals it shut behind her. So I kind of like his efficiency there, where he's just like, I'm gonna shut you inside this room.
Yeah, I mean, if he wanted to be efficient, he would have chucked a grenade in there or something, but yeah, it's fine.
But it almost works, which is the funny part.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than these villains usually manage, so yay!
My favorite example of that is in Diamonds Are Forever, where Blofeld has Bond thrown into the brig on the oil platform they're on, and there's just a door in the bottom of the brig that he just opens up and escapes through.
What the fuck?
Diamonds Are Forever is kind of shitty.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen the movie, but I remember nothing of it. I've excised it from my memory.
Oh, so you've excised Blofeld escaping in drag?
Yeah.
And now you remember that.
I try not to.
And so she's in there, and she's rapidly running out of oxygen, which she figures out because she drops one of her chem flares, and it gets almost immediately sniffed out. And she's looking around, and she sees that there's a specific flat stone near the top of the room, and so she's running on these statues, which are they're going up. It's this closed-in room, and there's this row of progressively taller statues, and so she jumps from statue to statue to get to the top, and she breaks through the stone to get out, and she gets into another room, and then she chisels away yet another stone in there, and finds herself conveniently inside the temple, which is full of albino moths.
Yeah, and that's like a really specific description, like albino moths. Moths are usually pretty light in coloring. Like,
I mean, unless they're Mothra, but
yeah, I mean, there are exceptions to it, but usually moths are pretty light, like light gray or something. It's like albino moths. What's going on here?
Oh, I think the idea is that they've been living in the dark and whatever, but I mean, I get the point of it, but it's still weird that they decided to describe that.
Yeah, they could have just said moth, but they said albino moth specifically. So we get where they're going, but it's still a weird detail.
It is, for sure. And so the room begins to shake, and she goes to a gold box on the altar, and she plays around with the puzzle locks on it, and I'm not really sure what she's doing or how she knows what she's doing with this puzzle. She just kind of goes, twist, 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 open.
Yeah, and I think there was something right after she uses her last flare that pissed me off.
Oh boy, can you remember?
Yeah, actually, I have the script and I'm following along. She makes a flare by using one of her bullet cartridges. And the description of it is weird because it says that with her knife, she slices off the bullet's tip from the shell. And it's like, you don't slice it off, you dig it out. And then she pours out the gunpowder onto a rag and then fires her gun to ignite the rag.
I forgot about that.
It's like, why did you fire your gun? Why? All it does is get everyone in the temple to know that you're out there somewhere because they heard the fucking shot. Like, couldn't you find any other way to light fucking gunpowder?
And you deafen yourself from firing a gun in an enclosed space, but...
Yeah, that too. Like, what the fuck's going on, dude?
Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, it's like they wrote in the guns, but they don't know anything about the guns. That sort of thing.
So, okay.
Like, there has to be another way.
You think she'd carry a flint on her or something?
Something that would spark if she drags it on the goddamn stone. Something, anything.
Yeah, but okay, so continue up the story. She opens the puzzle box because she apparently looked up the solution on GameFAQs.
Yeah.
And, yeah, she just manages to get it open and nab the next mask piece as Darius's men burst in with a bulldozer. I'm like, and this part is sort of like the movie because, the generic bad guy who was in like 3 of the Resident Evil movies, he like forces his way into the temple and that as well while she goes in through the back door. Only there's no random ghost girl helping her out here. And so, where am I? She uses a grappling gun because she's Batman now, and she zips up to the ceiling and blasts through it with her pistols, making her escape. And Lara emerges from a sewer grate in the streets of Alexandria. One of Darius's men is close behind her, but she escapes by grabbing onto the back of a bus. And so, off an expression of fear on the goon's face, we go to Darius's yacht, where he gives a morale-boosting speech to his men. And it looks like he's about to do the generic villain thing, where he's about to kill the man who lost track of her, but then he doesn't. Which, I thought that was a nice little twist.
Yeah, that was, because usually they get dead. They get shot or pushed off a cliff or anything.
I mean, I kind of wish they had kept that in the movie because he doesn't even kill people for failing them in the movie. Whatever the character's name is, he just grabs them and uses them as human shields. But I mean, can we expect him to be anything other than a mustache-twirling bad guy when he works for the Illuminati?
Not really, no.
And so we then cut to Lara. She calls up Justin at his house and tells him that the mask piece pointed her to the Hindu Kush mountains in Pakistan, where Alexander launched his last campaign from. Now that is historically true because he did cross those mountains and he did fight a campaign in India, which he ended up having to turn back because of the monsoon season, I think, eventually. But he won the battles over there.
There's that at least.
And so they also talk about how Darius must be after more than just the tomb itself, that there must be something powerful in there that he wants. And then she also tells Justin that she's already there in Pakistan, riding her motorcycle, and offers to meet up with him before hanging up.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not sure how fast you can get from Egypt to Pakistan in late 90s, but I don't know, you probably can, but it just strikes me a bit weird.
I kind of think there wouldn't be a direct flight.
Yeah, and it's like, you'd think that she'd call up Justin immediately after she's, safe in Egypt, and not like a day or two after when she's in Pakistan.
And I mean, it's kind of weird because, I mean, maybe she's waiting to call him up because she wants to keep him safe, and then she offers, hey, come meet me.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm not sure what's going on here, and I think they genuinely didn't think this through, in a way. Like, you don't just zip from Egypt to Pakistan just like that without any delays or that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, unless she took a Concorde there, but I don't know if they were still using those in the 90s.
Yeah, and still because, I mean, I don't know much about the region because for whatever reason in my country, they seem to think that it's very important that we go through the World War II 3 different times during our school career, but somehow we just sort of missed most of the other world. But like the area of Pakistan and India, that's kind of not a very nice area to be in, kind of.
Yeah, well, let's not dig too deep into that hole. But that is a theme that comes up. That is a theme that comes up in this script in a minute.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it probably wouldn't be as easy as 1, 2, 3 to get from Egypt to Pakistan without like any delays at the border or at the airport or anything like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, this isn't like Michael Bay's Transformers 2, where you can drive from Jordan to Egypt without actually crossing a border.
Oh, good lord.
Okay, so we go back to Darius, and Raymond has interpreted part of the mask's inscription that's written in some kind of difficult dialect, referring to the labors of Hercules, saying that one was left undone. And Darius seems to pick something up from this, saying that Alexander must have picked up from where Hercules left off, and makes preparations to head for Pakistan. And then back with Lara, she enters a bar in this village that's at the foot of the Khyber Pass, where she gets into a fight with like the rapey patrons, but she gets helped out by her contact, who's this guy named Otron, who says she's possessed by a demon and you'll take her for purification. And I'm like, did we really need this almost gang rape scene?
Yeah, but I mean, just to go back a bit, I do like that the villain's henchman knows more than Lara, because Lara didn't. I think it comes up a bit later in the script, but she couldn't read the passage with the difficult dialect, but the henchman could. So it's kind of refreshing that Lara isn't like the all-knowing superhuman that she usually is portrayed as.
I take your point, but I also think that it's a little repetitive that they end up being one step ahead of her in both places that they go to.
True.
I have a slight problem with that, but it's not a huge thing.
Yeah, but anyway, the attempted gang rape over with.
Thank Christ.
Yeah.
And so Lara shows Outran the mask piece, telling him that it belonged to Alexander. And after some haggling, he points her towards a young man named Rumi, who keeps the local story of Alexander, or Iskander, as he's called in the local language. And, it would make sense that there were stories of him that still existed because he made such a huge impact on the world everywhere he went.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows her the same inscription that Darius was looking at and tells her so he can read the dialect, but she can't. And he tells her there was one labor left unfinished by Hercules, but was completed by Alexander, which Lara realizes refers to the fortress called the Sogdian Rock, which Alexander conquered during his last campaign, which must be where the third mask piece is. Now, I don't know what they're talking about with this unfinished labors of Hercules thing, because the only thing he technically didn't finish are the 2 which the guy said didn't count, so he had to do 12 instead of 10. And there's the one where he cleaned out the really smelly horse stable with a river. He said, that doesn't count. The river did the work.
Yeah.
And there's another one
there's
another one I can't remember off the top of my head, which got counted against him, but.
Yeah. What's weird is this, Rumi is said to be about 16, and his portrayal is like this maybe magic, maybe mundane sort of oracle-ish.
Yeah.
Like, he's described in a way that he's really calm, and it's like he knows something that Lara doesn't, and seems wise beyond his years in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where it's coming from exactly, but I mean...
It's a bit of a drop thread.
Yeah. It's like, I mean... Okay, yeah, it's kind of fun to see someone, young in the role that's usually reserved for the wizened old hermit kind of character. But it's still a bit weird, like it's not really touched upon or explained or anything. It's just this young kid is the repository of the local law somehow.
Yeah, and he also knows things where it's not clear how he knows them. I'll elaborate on that later.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, and it's never picked up again, and it's just there, and we're just supposed to accept it.
All right, and so she then asks him what Darius must want from the 2. Also, I should mention it's rather ironic that a guy named Darius is trying to restore Alexander's glory and all that, because Darius III was the Persian emperor that Alexander conquered. But okay, so she asks him what Darius must want from the tomb, and Rumi tells her the story of the shield of Achilles gifted to him by his mother Thetis, forged by the gods to make him invincible. And then Alexander later acquired it and waged a 13-year campaign before he finally died. And so he warns her that uncovering the shield could lead to a plague of blood, and compares her own quest for glory to Alexander's, one that is ultimately hollow. And he also tells her to look through the eyes of Alexander. Now, they're kind of mixing and matching their mythology here, because Achilles does have a shield that is described in insane detail in the Iliad, but it's also kind of mixing and matching with the whole thing about him being invincible because he was bathed in the river Styx. I don't mind them putting their own spin on it, personally, but
it's like the whole point of Achilles is the Achilles heel thing.
Oh, you get them from behind so the shield doesn't work. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, they're trying something, but it's like, I don't know, like twisting the myth of Zeus into him being really, really chaste somehow for whatever reason. And he's just been like, getting tarred and feathered in by some jealous other god into being this huge, playboy or something. And it's like, it's weird. They're trying something new, but at the same time, they're sort of like tugging the actual point of the myth out of the myth in a way.
Yeah, they're mixing and matching two different parts of the myth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no worse than any other movie based on Greek mythology, if we're being honest.
Yeah, because even the Greek mythology doesn't actually know how to keep it straight.
And the shield was forged by Hephaestus, so that is a thing.
Yeah, there's probably something there, but it wasn't exactly the reason why Achilles was invincible.
I can accept it for the sake of this story, though. I can be like, okay, that's not quite accurate. I'm not going to call bullshit on like I do with the other script.
Yeah, but no, I think this falls into bless your heart, you're trying category. Like, we get where you're going for. It's not right, but it's okay because it's not that bad.
Okay, and so Lara, she returns to Altrin, who tells them where they're headed, only for him to say the people are already there, and so she figures that Darius has gotten ahead of her once again, and wants to beat them to the top of the mountain. And so, okay, this is where I gotta talk about one of their kind of geographical errors. Now, it is true that there was this fortress on top of a mountain called the Sogdian Rock that Alexander conquered, but it's quite a bit further north. It's actually in what is now Uzbekistan. So they kind of bullshit the geography here.
Yeah, I figured, because I'm not too aware of the whole geography of that area, but I figured that somewhere in the script there's going to be a little fudging of the geography in a way that doesn't make sense if you know the area, and I guess this is it.
And it's minor compared to some other things I've seen, but, it's not great either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's fine. It gets a pass again.
And so, and Altrin also leads her to Justin, who has taken her up on her offer, and has figured out about the shield on his own, and he wants in, so they go to climb the mountain the fortress sits on, but they're fired on by Darius's men, and they have to back down. But Lara has a plan B, though, and takes them to an airfield with a World War II RAF Spitfire on hand, and I'm like, these guys just watched The Mummy.
Yeah.
Go on.
Probably, if the owner of the plane has been religiously keeping it, maintained, then okay, yeah, it probably flies. But at the same time, it's a World War III RAF Spitfire. So.
And also, it's described as looking like a death trap.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, then.
And so she wants Justin to fly her up the mountains because apparently he's a pilot, and he objects at first, but ultimately agrees to the idea of flying Lara above the fortress, and they agree they're going to meet in Karachi later, and she puts the specific location in her laptop and leaves it with him, and where she halo jumps down, landing right in the middle of the ancient structure, which is a cool little action scene.
Yeah, it is.
Halo, we're mixing our video game franchises here.
Yeah, but yeah, halo jumps are a thing, but I think she'd actually need extra oxygen to make it.
Yeah, that's
depending on how high she actually was.
Yeah, even Big Boss needed extra oxygen.
Yeah.
And of course, I know they're a real thing and all that, but I couldn't resist the joke.
Yeah, but it's like, again, we get where they're going, but...
At least there isn't a Tomb Raider-inspired program that comes packaged with Windows 10. I'll give it that.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so she makes her way to a temple of Zeus, which was dedicated by Alexander according to an inscription, and finds a deep tunnel with water at the bottom, as well as a large golden dish filled with water from an unknown source. And so she finds a raised tile and deliberately trips a booby trap, which causes the dish to overflow and flood the place. And so the door seals shut, and she waits for the water to flood the tunnel to the top, which sounds more like a well than a tunnel from this description, but okay. And she dives in, swimming along the tunnel at the bottom and almost drowning before pulling at a seam that opens up a new tunnel, pulling away a gear as she goes. And then she goes to, and this whole thing, it's kind of repetitive to have yet another underwater set piece here.
But this time she's doing it without the extra oxygen.
Yeah, but maybe do something a bit different, especially if you're on top of a mountain.
Yeah, maybe.
But okay, the gear goes into an inset on the ceiling of the tunnel, which she turns, opening up the entrance to a new temple containing frescoes depicting Alexander's deification. And then outside, Darius comes across the sealed temple door with water leaking out, and he just goes, "Open it up," because he realizes she beat him again. He's getting a bit comical.
Yeah, I bet he's regretting that action of letting her go way back when.
And so in the temple, Lara is photographing the wall frescoes and spontaneously decides to turn on the infrared function to check the area where one had been scraped off. And she finds an image of Alexander's face. I think this is kind of a cool idea that she can check where something once was. I think that's kind of cool. And remember,
it is, yeah, but she's still taking pictures with a digital video camera. I mean, I know they have the picture mode and video mode, but it's still like, just take the video.
And she remembers Rumi's line about looking through the eyes of Alexander, so she pushes the eyes and opens up the wall, revealing the final mask piece, which she checks for booby traps, finding that it's weighing down the base that it's perched on. And then Darius bursts in from underwater because why bring backup with you?
Yeah.
Claiming the mask as his birthright and holding Lara at gunpoint. And while he's talking, Lara notices that the base connects to a circular panel on the floor right behind him, and so she trips the trap and the room begins to get flushed out with water, and they get sucked into a long tunnel, fighting as they go, and they get flushed out into a waterfall and into a jungle river. And Lara climbs out, hides in a ruined Hindu temple, climbing to the top, which happens to be right next to Darius's base camp.
Of course.
Convenient.
Yeah.
And then the edge of the temple crumbles under her, revealing her location, and so she swings away on vines like she's Shia LaBeouf in the fourth Indiana Jones before stealing one of their ATVs. And they get into kind of a cool chase sequence where she jumps over 2 ravines before getting away. And then she hides in the back of a truck and hitches a ride to Karachi, which would be kind of far away from the Sogdian and Ragli, even if you're just going by the location they give in the script. Like, that's all the way down on the ocean, I think, so that's quite a long ride.
Yeah.
And she makes her way to the home of her friends Amalia and Deepak, where Justin is waiting. And while they're preparing for dinner, Lara tells Amalia about the fact that she's after the shield of Achilles, and Amalia warns her that using it for the wrong purposes could spell disaster. And over dinner, we find out that Lara survived the plane crash over the Himalayas, which killed her parents and all her close friends. So we just added to the tragedy there.
Yeah.
And my dog was on the plane, too.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was in one of the reboots, the ones before the current ones, where Lara and her mother actually did go into a plane crash somewhere in Tibet, and that's how her mother vanished, because it's wibbly-wobbly portals, whatever. But yeah, plane crashes are a thing. I'll give it that.
Mm-hmm. And also, I believe the plane crash was sort of in the backstory for the originals, but there wasn't, like, any lost parents or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think in one, it might have been Lara and her father. Then there was the one with Lara and her mother. And it's like, plane crashes, Lara and one of the parents is also a thing, as far as I can recall.
Because I think and I read about this ages ago, I think in the original series her parents were alive, because there's one where she air quotes dies and they show up at her funeral.
Oh, okay.
I think I read something about that, but whatever. We're getting off track. But she crashed in the mountains, and it was Amalia and Deepak who ended up rescuing her. And so now she's like, that's why she's not really close to anyone, and Justin now actually has an understanding of why she left him behind. Although you'd think she wouldn't have left him behind up on a mountain, considering her history with mountains.
Yeah, but whatever. Script must move on.
Yeah, that's true. And so we see Darius meeting with some of his men in Karachi before going back to Lara and Justin, who have a moment where Justin muses about how maybe they should leave the shield where it is, but Lara convinces him to keep looking because it would be a very important find. And so they snap the 2 pieces of the mask together, and they realize that it's also a landform map as well as a face, which points to the tomb's location. Now, that also is in the D'Souza script, but they have the complete mask from the beginning, and they know roughly the area they're going to look for the tomb in, but they still waste their time going off trying to find a clue at this sunken house in the Aegean Sea.
Okay. Weird.
And
okay.
Also, it was his father's death mask, not Alexander's.
Ah.
Which doesn't make any sense, but there you go. And so they tried to match it to the area around Babylon where Alexander died, and they fail that. And so Justin asks why a man who thought himself a god would build a tomb, and then that gives Lara the Scooby-Doo moment where she realizes something and she tries Macedonia, finding that the map matches up to Mount Olympus and the surrounding area.
Yeah, but what's weird is they actually misspelled a word here because the passage goes, Lara stops in her tracks looking at Justin like he just untied the Guardian knot, as in Guardean, not Gordian.
Oh, it's referring to the newspaper, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. It's like, okay, fine. There actually are several misspellings all over the script, and some have been corrected with a pencil. But it's like, Guardian knot is a pretty big thing, so you should probably know how to spell that.
Like, that's a huge part of the Alexander story. But okay, so that's when Darius enters with some of his men holding Deepak and Amalia at gunpoint, and he says he's decided to use Lara's skills to his advantage and uses Deepak's and Amalia's lives gear to do so. He makes his offer, and Lara agrees, and we go straight to Mount Olympus, where Darius has set up a base camp around the tomb's entrance. So there's a bit of a time skip here, so that covers the geographical thing as well as them actually finding the location. Darius gives a rousing speech to motivate his men and uses the 3 mask pieces to open the entrance, which causes siege engines to spring up from the ground, and it causes chaos in the camp, and I think we're led to believe that they either were all killed by these things or died, because like a handful of the team goes inside, and that's the last we hear about the guys outside.
Yeah, pretty much. I think this is probably just a convenient way to explain why there are not a lot of people for Justin and Lara to fight through, in a way. Because they're all dead now.
As like, swell man, you're going to restore the Greek Empire, but you don't have an army, even if you are immortal. That's going to be hard. Yeah. Nice work, Darius. But the main party heads into the tomb, and in the first chamber, and I like this. I like the simplicity of this. Lara just looks at the walls and spots hidden slots and holes and goes, hey, there's traps here. And she wants to send someone ahead, and Darius goes, Justin, you have to do it. And she says, hey, run as fast as you can, and then throw yourself down once you reach these 2 pillars on the far side. So he runs really fast to avoid the projectiles from the walls, and then when he ducks, he avoids the blades that pop out from the pillars, the spinning blades, which are basically the ones from Last Crusade.
Yeah, this is weird because the script says that Justin takes off a dead sprint screaming like a marine. It's like, why would you scream? You need that oxygen to fucking run. Stop screaming, you idiot.
Hoorah!
How does a marine even scream anyway? Is it a long sustained note, or is it just the one hoorah at the beginning, or what the fuck?
I'm trying to think of a relevant Full Metal Jacket quote, but I don't want to waste any time. And then a cypress beam comes swinging down, and then Lara jumps on top of it and leaps over to Justin as the beam collapses some of the tomb on top of Darius and his men. And that image of her running on top of a swinging beam is sort of in the movie as well. You see, I'm trying very hard to justify their screenplay credit on that movie.
Yeah.
And so Lara and Justin continue through the next chamber, avoiding an arrow trap, which she does by throwing her pack into the way, and that makes all the arrows shoot out. As well as one where there's sulfur. There's what?
Somehow. Yeah. I don't know. The old ass Egyptians, Macedonians, whatever, did they have motion detectors somehow?
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
Because, wouldn't you have to actually step on something mechanic to trigger it and not just throw something in there? How would they detect it?
Magic.
The
same way
wizard did it.
The same way they found Antarctica.
Yeah, a wizard did it.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going with.
Yep, a wizard. And so, and then there's another trap where there's sulfur on the floor, which acts like a spark, and it makes Greek fire well up from the floor and then catch on fire, which is an actual thing. And they drop flagstones on it, and they leap over the fire, so I guess convection isn't a thing.
Apparently not.
And then they get to They enter the treasure chamber. It says Darius and his men are starting to pursue, and his flunkies keep getting caught in the traps, which is pretty funny. But Lara and Justin, they enter the treasure chamber, and they find that there's the door into the next room is trapped with electricity from 2 Babylonian batteries, which was an interesting addition, because there is this thing called the Baghdad battery, which we don't know when it was actually invented or how long they had it for. It's this weird kind of anomaly.
Yeah, but I mean, even if there is a real world precedence for it, shouldn't they have run out by now?
Yeah, that is very possible.
Yeah, because unless there's something there, something akin to the Damascus Steel thing, like there's just some kind of combination that we don't know yet that would power up batteries for the past, 2,000 years before they made it to the chamber. It's still 2,000 years.
Alexander died in 323, so from 1999, that is roughly 2,000, not quite 2,323 years, a little bit less.
Yeah, but it's like, what kind of battery would last that long, much less something done in that time?
Energizer, obviously, because it keeps going and going and going.
I mean, yeah, how stupid of me.
And she gets the door open by using an ivory scepter that doesn't conduct electricity. And the next room is the burial chamber, where they find Alexander's sarcophagus, as well as a fresco depicting Alexander and his infant son ascending to the gods while standing on the shield. And Lara makes a realization here when she says that the son died during Alexander's final campaign in infancy, and he became depressed and gave up the shield and lost the will to live. He wanted to join his son in the afterlife. And she says the shield will be in there, and she spots 2 cogs set into the wall. Now, I actually like this twist.
Yeah, it's better than the shield just being there. It's like, it's something new, in a way.
And I like how they managed to make Alexander a bit of a 3-dimensional character after building him up all this time. I think that's actually a really clever little moment.
Which means that this characterization of Alexander is better than the script coming up.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he might as well be a Skeksis in that script, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in good time.
And so Darius enters, followed by Raymond and one final guy who was lucky enough not to fall into the traps. And so he turns the cog, opening up a passageway with a staircase, and he continues on, telling Raymond and the remaining man to kill them. And so Justin grapples with the nameless goon, and Lara fights Raymond, who accidentally gets electrocuted and killed when his knife touches the wire that's part of the electric trap. That's Roadrunner right there.
Yeah.
It's Wile E. Coyote.
But I mean, if it's there, why not use it?
And then she shoots the nameless man in the head and saves Justin, so Justin is really shit at fighting.
Yeah.
Like, it just went Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell taking forever to fight one guy.
This is more like in the Iron Man 2 with Black Widow and Happy.
Oh, yeah!
Like Black Widow mows down everyone, Happy has trouble with that one dude only.
It's what the Green Hornet movie should have been.
Yeah.
Instead of that Seth Rogen piece of shit, but that's a story for another day. But then, so we see so she follows Darius up the stairs, and then we see Darius uses the cogs to open the son's tomb, and we find the shield on top of an infant-sized coffin, which is just such a sad image.
Yeah.
Like his son was dead, and he put the magic protective shield over him, like, aww. And so he picks it up, and he takes so long admiring the fucking thing that Lara manages to slam into him.
Dumbass.
And then he trips a lever, opening up a trapdoor, and they fall through, landing on an ancient cargo barge set on wooden rollers. And so they're fighting on top of this thing as it rolls down the tunnel. So it's, once again, it's that rocket sled from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Only, not a shit.
And so they're fighting on top of this thing, and neither of them is able to pick up the shield. It ends at a wall of ice, which they crash through before landing on a winding ice track, which they describe as being like a bobsled track, which just happens to be there.
Somehow,
whatever. And so now it's the ending bobsled fight from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, only with a magic shield.
And a giant boat.
Yeah. And so they're fighting on this thing, and Darius manages to get a hold of the shield and actually starts wielding it, and so she shoots him, but his bullet holes close up rapidly, and she just goes, fuck it, rushes Darius, grabs a hold of the shield, and then touching it apparently has granted her the strength to yank it away from him, and he falls to the floor of the barge, and his wounds open up again, and he turns into a bloody mass. So he's all fucked up. He's like every Indiana Jones bad guy right now.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so he's Frank now. He's from Hellraiser. And it hits a curve in the track and breaks free, and they end up hanging by a single frayed rope over a cliff and a 2,000-foot sheer drop. And like Darius, despite being a weird bloody man, is trying to grab the shield, and Justin just shows up at the cliff. He just happens
Somehow.
to be there.
I mean, I have no idea where he jumped off, if he jumped off, or just what happened with him. He's just suddenly there.
He was just in time. And he arrives and tries to save Lara, but she sees weird skinless man trying to grab the shield, and so she cuts the rope and allows herself to fall along with the barge, and as Darius falls to his death, this is so fucking ridiculous, but I kind of love it. She grabs onto the shield, catches an updraft, and uses it as a hang glider for a bit, before catching onto the cliff with a rope and grappling hook.
Yeah, I mean, good on them for not making her use it as a goddamn surfboard and like surf down the ice luge track, whatever. But still, she's using it as a goddamn hand glider.
Yeah, thankfully it's not Triple X.
Yeah.
No, instead it turns into the windsurfing scene from Die Another Day. No, let's not talk about Die Another Day.
Let's not.
And so she returns the shield to the sun's tomb, and it's actually kind of a nice moment where she leaves it there because she has she actually has this kind of, introspective moment, which is kind of, I think is pretty well written. And then she meets with Justin outside, and she tells him he was right and that the shield should stay where it is. And she also tells him that the power of the shield felt lonely. Aww. I mean, that's kind of cheesy.
Yeah, a little bit.
And they find skiing equipment in the campsite outside the tomb, and they ski back to civilization, and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
So it's not bad.
It's not bad. It's tolerable, but again, this is damnation by faint praise because in comparison to all the other scripts, that's not much.
Well, I mean, I think I liked it a lot more than you do. I think you just a little bit of, polish and a little bit of tweaking. I think this could have been a lot better too. Yeah,
I think so too. I think I'm more neutral about this. Like, it's barely on the side of this is okay, but I'm pretty neutral about it.
Well, it also happens that I've read all the scripts and you've only read 2 and you've not even seen the worst one.
I don't want to see the worst one.
Oh, I am sending that over to you. I mean, I already did an episode, but we can just grouse about it over Discord.
Why are you doing this to me?
Because I can. Oh. But no, it's pretty good. And then Massid and Zinman, they turned it in, and I'm guessing, and they weren't brought back. And I guess it was because they were just new writers. I've not seen any really solid information as to why they weren't kept on board. I guess it's because they were new and they wanted people who were established to come in and work on it or something. And D'Souza talks about how, because according to Massid and Zinman, the producers liked it. But then D'Souza is like, oh, no, they didn't. Nobody liked it at all. And I'm like, I think it's just sour grapes because they didn't use your script, dude.
Probably, yeah.
So yeah, they ended up getting different writers to come in and rewrite it, and we'll be moving on to that. So Massid and Zinman were out for reasons that I haven't been able to find, and they were pretty quickly replaced by Mike Werb and Michael Colleary, who were just then coming off the success of Face Off, and Werb had a credit on The Mask with Jim Carrey, and together they had also written Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die, so that's another Arnold Vosloo connection coming up in this episode. Because he took over in the direct-to-video sequels for Liam Neeson. And later on, they kind of did some stuff separately, but they also co-created the WB series Tarzan, which only lasted 9 episodes. They also wrote a movie called Firehouse Dog during that period where there was a lot of really crappy, low-budget kids' movies about dogs. Because you had that...
So, from late 90s to about mid-nought?
Roughly, because this was 2007. So you had that, you had Hotel for Dogs, you had Good Boy, where all the dogs were aliens, you had both cats and dogs movies. It just seemed like there was a lot of live-action talking dog movies during that period for some reason, and I don't quite get it. But their Tomb Raider script, and now, so they came on relatively quickly after Massid and Zinman, because the outline I have from them is October 8th, 1999, and the full draft, which we're going to be discussing in detail, is November 8th, 1999, so they came in only a couple months after Massid and Zinman did their draft in August. And the overall outline of this draft is relatively similar. You've got Lara Croft, who's going around and finding the 3 different pieces of these things that's supposed to lead to the Tomb of Alexander. Only here she's picking up the separate pieces of the Shield of Achilles itself, so you know about that from the beginning. And the locations are different, and they play up the supernatural aspects quite a bit more.
Yeah, it's like a weird case of Mad Libs. Like there's some constant, but then some of them just go off the rails.
Yes, very true. And so, jumping right into it, it begins with, weirdly enough, it's showing close-ups of Lara's passport. So it's the start menu to every Uncharted game.
Pretty much, yeah.
And we get an opening, a big historical opening in 632 BC. First problem, we're showing the death of Alexander here, and we are over 300 years early. Too early for it, because he died in 323, and what's interesting is that the outline actually gets the date right, so I don't know what happens. But okay, we're on the slopes of Mount Olympus, so they give that, so that thing happens here too, but it's not a twist, they give it away right away. And Alexander the Great, who's been driven mad by a magic breastplate called the Shield of Achilles, because they keep calling this fucking thing a shield, even though it's a breastplate, and there's this whole, and there's that, and he's constructed a fortress temple, which is also his tomb, which is carved into the mountainside, and he's begun sacrificing his own people to Cerberus and Hades, and he's said to have forged the shield as well as the magic spear Alexander carries, and it's this whole thing about how, like, it was forged by Hades, and it's this big magic temptation to evil thing, and I'm like, Hades wasn't even a forge guy in the mythology.
Yeah, that was Hephaestus.
And Hephaestus is the one who made Achilles the shield that gets described in great detail in the Iliad.
Yeah, like, did you do any research at all?
And there's this pit called the Fountain of Fire, and we see Alexander, who's crazy and mad with power, and he covers this slave with wine and dips him into the fire, and the wine blocks out the fire, and Cerberus eats him, but Cerberus is off camera, and it's weird.
I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, so Alexander is a bloodthirsty madman. But he has the two aides called Priam and Sophius, so that name carries over. And they're plotting against him with the help of his consort Livia, who jabs him in the foot with a poison needle that she smuggled inside a bar of soap as she bathes his feet. So they're kind of doing the Achilles heel thing here. And jabbing of the poison needle makes the breastplate fall off, and Priam splits it into three pieces with the spear. And I swear the dialogue in this whole sequence is, like, really robotic, like, really on the nose, like, Alexander has gone too far, he must be stopped. There is no way to get him because the shield makes him invulnerable, blah, blah. Like, it goes on like that for this whole, 10 pages?
Yeah, it's very two pieces of firewood knocked together. Like, it's really stiff and unnatural and weird.
And the pieces, they get sent out with horsemen to the east, north, south, and west as far as they can go. And plans are made to expunge Alexander's madness from history because Alexander was a just and noble man before he acquired the shield and became evil. So we will have history remember him as such. And it's like, okay, dialogue, stop.
Yeah, but what bothers me is that one of the lines from Sophie's is, and this Holocaust never happened. Should you be using that word?
That's true. And also, the usage of that word doesn't make any sense because that's he's using a modern usage of the word which would not have existed in ancient times because Holocaust usually just meant a lot of destruction by fire.
Yeah, so it's like there probably were better word choices for that one, like massacre or whatever. Just something other than that. But
we got to shout to the cheap seats.
Yeah, apparently. Because our audience are idiots.
Okay, and then we cut to the present day where we meet Lara Croft and she's introduced via it's not quite a Schumacher-esque suiting up montage, but it feels like it's described in the same way where it's moving over every part of her body. And it describes her as wearing a tank top that contains, and this is a very weird turn of phrase, exuberant bust.
Yeah, God, sometimes this script sound like something you'd find on a men writing women Reddit thread. Like,
oh boy. We're only scratching the surface with that one.
Yeah, you can just say big boob. I promise, we get it. Big boobs, just exuberant bust. How the fuck are tits exuberant? How?
Yeah, even just on a pure writing standpoint and not on the whole tits standpoint, it's still stupid.
Yeah, like, I can tell that this was mostly written by men. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but I can tell.
And you couldn't from the last one.
It wasn't this bad.
Like, they just said, oh, she's beautiful, and they left it at that.
Yeah, that's good. But here we go into these weird fucking territories and guys, remember this tit thing. We're gonna come back to it. We're gonna come back to it.
Yes, we are. And another thing I should say is, I think it's funny that all this focus on tits was originally a programming mistake.
Yeah, I heard the lead programmer set the value too high or something.
Yeah, and they went, okay, we like it, and that became like the meme before we had meme as a concept in the 90s.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, the way this script is written and how differently it pays attention to the details and descriptions, it's like we've gone from tolerable to shit.
Yes. And so she's raiding what appears to be a Nordic tomb, and she grabs a chalice, which sets off an alarm and turns on all the lights, revealing that she's in some sort of exhibit. And she zips up into an air duct just as it seals shut, and after accidentally crashing into a polar bear enclosure, she escapes out of the building, and it's revealed to be a Viking-themed casino on the Las Vegas Strip. And this is where...
You skipped something.
I did?
The VR glass.
Oh, those come back with a vengeance later.
Oh, they do, but they make their first appearance here, and they are shit. Just fucking...
In my defense, I was taking my notes down after midnight when I was reading this.
Yeah, but no, I think they're probably meant to be the round sunglasses that became her trademark in the early games. But it literally, it's a smart vision thing, like a Google Glasses before Google Glasses were a thing. Well, they're trying to go for something like that.
They seem to just function as night vision goggles for the most part. They call them VR glasses because it's the 90s.
Yeah, but it's like somehow it mapped the area and makes like a topographic map of the area that you can see, but it's still stupid.
Yeah, it's very, we are technological and cool with a K.
Yeah.
But no, but yeah, it's a Viking-themed casino in Las Vegas. And in the earlier outline, which I actually covered this when I did that other Tomb Raider episode a couple years back, and I actually had this script at the time, but I got it when I was in the middle of recording. So I didn't want to extend the episode anymore, so I just covered the outline. So I've talked about this before, but I'm talking about it here again because it's relevant. But in the earlier outline, it's an Aztec-themed building. The animal enclosure she falls into, it's a tiger. And there's more of a chase scene where she's dodging lasers, and there's security guards chasing her, and she has to outrun the cops on her motorcycle on the strip.
Yeah, this one was probably the better choice, if only because it's probably shorter than that one.
Yeah, save your big action sequences for later.
Yeah.
If you can call them that.
They still fuck it up, but yeah.
They did write Face Off, but
who knows how much that's a your mileage may vary sort of thing.
Yeah, but who knows how much of the action sequences were John Woo or not.
Yeah.
The doves in the church on the beach definitely were.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so she makes it aboard the plane back to London, and there's this odd scene where this guy asks her for a pillow, and it's almost like she's going to it's almost like she's considering asking him out or something, but then she sees he's married.
Yeah, it's I have no idea why the sequence is here. Why? What's it trying to say?
It's the running gag with her man troubles, I guess, that's in this thing.
Yeah, but what's it trying to achieve that Lara Croft would prefer to have a normal life somehow? What's it doing here?
It's the running gag that gets brought up later about how every man she gets introduced to is either gay, married, sexist, or a phony. That's a running gag in this thing, but yeah,
it's a stupid gag.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. But she arrives at Heathrow, where she successfully passes the chalice through customs by calling it a souvenir from a gift shop, which is actually pretty clever. And
yeah, true.
And the First National Treasure kind of does that a little bit with the Declaration of Independence. But we also learn here that she's a travel writer who works for a magazine. So and they actually use this phrasing later in the script. They say travel writer by day, Tomb Raider by night.
Who talks like that?
Writers.
Okay, then writers need to go outside of their house and interact with people more, because no one talks like this.
Well, no one can do that now.
Well, not now. This was written in, 99?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've had, over 20 years to do that. So I really hope they've gone outside at some point.
I guess I had to go outside to research Firehouse Dog.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
But okay, she's in the terminal, and she gets spotted by a scary-looking American mercenary named Theo Rooker, who is talking on the phone, mentioning a team getting sent to Rabat, and he's also says, like, she's here, I'm going to deal with her, but I gotta get, out of sight of people to do it, so it's like, ooh, this guy's a bad guy.
Yeah.
And then Rooker follows Lara as she boards the London Underground, where she meets with this guy called Wingard, who's an older Danish-Jewish man who hired her to retrieve the chalice, which was used in his parents' wedding before the Nazis took it and they killed them. And they covertly swap bags, and Lara receives one full of cash, which she jumps off at a children's hospital fundraiser. And Rooker follows her, but he realizes they made a switch too late, and he actually yanks the bag away from the children's hospital, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, but I'm weirded out that the money is described to be thousands of euro dollars.
Oh, that's right.
Do you know how money works? Because these are not the same thing.
It's euros, and if she's in England, it's going to be pounds anyways.
Yeah, and if this guy... Okay, let's assume that Mr. Wingard actually lives in the UK. Why would he have dollars?
Why would he have euros?
No, pounds. If he lived in Ireland, then it would be euros. Probably.
No, but he gives her a bag full of euros, so why would he have euros?
Yeah. Euro dollars.
Euro dollar. Okay, so Wingard, he returns home and he places the chalice on his mantle, and remember that because I'm going to have to talk about that in a second. And he gets a mysterious figure, garrots him to death with a silver garrote, and steals the chalice.
Yep.
And the next morning, Lara arrives at the offices of Odyssey UK, the magazine she writes for, and there's an interaction with this receptionist named Justine, where we learned that Lara doesn't like being called Lady Croft, and so that's part of her character development, if you can call it that, for this script.
Yeah.
And she meets with Rosalind, her editor, who praises her article on Vegas and wants her to stop being freelance and write here permanently because you're just too good, damn it, which she refuses. And then she also has to school Lara on the difference between it's without an apostrophe and it's with an apostrophe, because apparently she's the 1978 version of Lois fucking Lane, who can't spell a single word to save her life despite being a professional writer.
Yeah, there's also a correction on here, as in Lara writes Herar instead of Here.
I'm like, are you sure you come from nobility, Lara, or are you just dumb? She might just be dumb.
Or lazy.
Or lazy.
I mean, she does say that she uses a spell check, so that's a bit of a... So...
She uses Clippy.
Yeah, Clippy was such a help back then.
And then Rosalind tries to set her up for a lunch date with a rugby player named Colin the Crusher. But Lara scares him off by driving a motorcycle absurdly fast, and she also... This is where we get that line about how every man you set me up with is gay, married, sexist, or a total phony.
Yeah, but also, the Crusher is introduced by downing a can of soda, crushing it, and tossing it into the recycling bin. And I kind of hope that they meant that he would crush it onto his forehead, for maximum doucheness.
Like an Animal House.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just... Oh my god, why?
And Lara, she returns to the office and Justine flags her down, saying they've been called by a Lord Powell who wants to meet with her. Now, I have to say, the whole magazine writer thing is something that has survived all the way from the D'Souza script, and it has gotten less stupid from that one as it goes along, but she went from running a douchey extreme sports magazine to running her own adventure magazine and selling her stories to being a angsty freelance writer, so it's not really an improvement this time. It's more of a lateral move. Pretty
much, yeah. It's just, why the magazine angle in the script? Why? Was that like a thing I missed back then? Like, were travel magazine writers the hot shit, or...
I don't know. But here's where we get to talk about another outline difference, and I'm going to read this directly from the outline, because this is just ridiculous.
Oh, goody.
Because instead of getting called directly by Lord Powell, there's another scene where she gets paged about tea with a friend of my mother's, and then she goes to Buckingham Palace, where Lara has tea with the Queen, who has taken a maternal interest in Lara's well-being since her parents' plane disappeared. Lara refuses to accept that her parents are dead. She contends they are only missing. So Lara is just chummy with the Queen.
Come the fuck on.
And Simon West specifically refers to that scene when talking about the Werb and Colleary drafts. He talks about how he called the scripts a tragedy waiting to happen.
Okay, but so is this script.
Yeah. This version, they just took the really, really dumb. So it's a good thing they took that out.
It is, but it's still a disaster.
Yeah, and so Lara meets with Lord Charles Powell at the British Museum is from a Greek exhibit, and he's her uncle, which I think came into play when they took out the whole Queen thing, and that's going to be really freaky later on, whom she hasn't seen much of since her parents died, and he was also once the ambassador to Greece. And he fell in love with the country, and he had a mistress there, but nothing more is really said about her. And they go to Powell's office at the British Foreign Office, where Lara is shocked to see the chalice on his desk. And he knows all about what she's been doing and stuff like that, and this is where I get that line about being a travel writer by day, tomb writer by night.
It's a stupid line.
But he's apparently okay with all that, just tells her to be careful. And he says the chalice came to him after the owner was found murdered, and then he shows Lara a picture of Rooker, who was spotted trying to flee the country with it, but he escaped but left it behind, and I'm immediately going, ding, 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 this isn't true.
Yeah, because if it had been at the scene, I don't know why. It's like Lara's clutching the idiot ball now.
A little bit. So Powell then calls in Greek archaeologist Alexis Tulin, who specializes in tracing stolen items, and then he smashes the chalice, revealing a piece of the shield inside. So, okay, the shield, not only is it how ridiculously big would this chalice have to be, because it fits on the mantelpiece. How big was this dude's mantle?
Or how small was the chest?
Yeah, how was Alexander like a munchkin?
Yeah, I mean, oh my god. It's like they tried to correct the script, but in doing so, they just careened harder off the cliff.
And yeah, so I think you can take my point when I say the size of the goblet is a bigger problem here than it is in the other script.
I mean, yeah, kind of, but depending on how big the shield would be in the previous script, then it would still be a pretty big problem.
Well, it wasn't the shield inside it was the death mask.
All right, yeah. I forgot, there was the stupid shield, but yeah.
No, they found it locked in the tomb at the end.
Yeah, I forgot.
And so where have I go? Also, Powell as a villain name kind of came in the movie. That kind of got carried over. But moving on, Lara recognizes it and recounts the legend of how 3 pieces were sent to Scandinavia, North Africa, and India. And she knows all of this because her father was obsessed with the story himself. And also, these locations are all a bit more believable than Antarctica.
Oh, tons more. I mean, at the time, okay, so the year in this script is wrong, but at the time, those probably would be the ends of the known Earth of the time. So it makes a lot more sense than straight to Antarctica.
Now, of course, if this thing is dangerous, why not just dump it in the ocean and be done with it? But what do I know?
Yeah, we're not the experts here.
Yeah, we're not. Alexis then tells her that Alexander's tomb was recently found on Mount Olympus and that word leaked out, and now Rooker's people are trying to obtain the shield with a team already on the ground in Rabat, Morocco. And the Greek government was slow to act, so Alexis turned to Powell for help. He wants Lara to help him retrieve the pieces before Rooker can, and Lara agrees so long as she can call the shots, and Alexis is like, hey, okay. And also in the outline, he's called Darius, so that name carried over for at least a small amount of time.
Okay, I wonder why they changed it for this one.
Don't know. And so Lara, she returns home to Croft Manor, where she disastrously tries to cook, and there's a brief training interlude where she fails to perform an inverted backflip, and she's met by Hilary, her butler, so I guess you're glad he's not called Jeeves here.
Yeah, I am. This time around, yeah.
And she tells him that she already has another job lined up and leaves tomorrow, and he wants her to go on a vacation, and is especially against Rabat because she has some sort of unspecified history with the Pasha. Oh boy, we'll get to that.
I wish we didn't, but we have to.
Yes, we have to. Lara says she'll keep a low profile, and Hilary retorts by saying that she can't find one. What did I write here?
I
wrote something weird in my notes. Hold on.
Yeah, because Lara says, I can find any tomb anywhere, and Hilary replies, any tomb but one, and Hilary means her parents.
Yes, that's what I meant. I completely forgot to write down the thing about she can find any tomb. But he goes like, yeah, he's like...
Though, side note, a bit earlier, Lara mentions a magical dagger lost somewhere in Shang, China. So would that be a reference to the games?
I believe it would be.
Yeah, because there was that one game where she goes, what was it, the Great Wall in China to search for the dagger or...
I think that's 2.
Okay, I can't remember the earlier games, but yeah, I distinctly remember that there was something about a magical dagger in China.
Yeah,
in one of the games.
I'm pretty sure that's it, because that has gotten, like, name dropped in a couple of the scripts before this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they mentioned the Scion, too, which I think is the thing from the first game.
Yeah, the Scion of Atlantis, or Scion, how do you pronounce that?
I'm pretty sure it's Scion.
Yeah.
Like the car.
Yeah, no, because I remember in the Tomb Raider Anniversary game, Keely Horse pronounced it as Scion.
Okay, I think she needed some stronger direction.
Yeah, so that's kind of tripping me up. But yeah, I mean, good on them. They tried to look up information about the games, I guess, but they couldn't be bothered to see on what century Alexander the Great lived.
Well, even in this one, they mentioned something about the dagger, and she just kind of laughs it off, so it's almost kind of like it's going, the games, ugh.
Another one of those.
But yeah, we have Hillary saying that you only go out looking for these things because there's one tomb you can't find, and that's of your parents. And she just gets pissy and leaves. And she heads to the library where she opens up the safe and looks over her father's items, including a cigar box that triggers a cute flashback to her as a child interacting with her father while on a dig. And oh my god. Not only is his name Henshingly Croft, and it's called Lee for short, but they go out of their way to say, cast Sting.
Don't cast Sting.
The man is not a good actor.
No.
Have you seen Dune? I will find him.
Yeah, though interestingly, Lara's full name in this script would be Lara Henshingly Croft.
So she's got a male middle name.
Yeah, for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's an aristocratic legacy thing that us mere mortals have no way of understanding.
Maybe it was like a grandmother's or great-grandmother's maiden name or something like that, because sometimes they do that.
Maybe, yeah.
But that was silly. And then the next morning, she visits the family mausoleum and looks over her parents' empty vault. So she has an empty mausoleum vault that she visits and angsts over.
Yeah.
She's like a less justified version of the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne going out to his parents' tomb.
I mean...
In a dream sequence, no less.
Yeah, but then we also do have a bat thing going on.
Oh, yes, so... that comes back.
Yeah.
Hallucinatory bats, too, so kind of a dream sequence again.
Yeah, so more of a connection than we thought.
This is turning into the BVS episode, Jesus Christ. And so, Lara, she gets on the plane to Rabat with Alexis, and she apologizes to him, which is kind of a decent character moment. And she shows him part of her father's journal, talking about a location called the Tomb of the Plagues, where the next shield piece is said to be hidden, and supposedly it doesn't follow the natural order. And we get this weird bit where Alexis is like, you're a woman of science, do you really believe in this? And she talks about how she went down into the sacrificial pit in Mexico, and she came out of it, and for a week she didn't have a shadow?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's actually being serious or just pulling his leg. Could be either, honestly.
No, she had her Shadow Link fight, because that's more Legend of Zelda than this Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
But she says, I don't necessarily believe in anything, but I believe in what I have experienced myself. And that's just a weird moment, man.
Yeah, but then afterwards, Alexis actually plays with the light and waves his hand and looks for his shadow, dude.
I forgot about that.
Are you 8?
Yeah, his character is so weird because he changes 3 or 4 different times too.
Yeah, it honestly feels like he's being literally written by several different people.
Yeah, and so while they're on the plane, they're being spied on by a tough-looking woman named Ilsa Larson, whom she'll come back, and also, I guess she's meant to be a gender-flipped version of the villain from the games, I guess?
Yeah, because, the name's almost the same. I think the guy in the games was Larson, I think.
And he was from Texas. That's about all I know about him.
Yeah. He was more tolerable in the Anniversary game than the actual first game, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and so they arrive in Rabat, and they go to the hotel, where Lara sets up a hammock for herself to sleep in, because she always sleeps in the hammock, and she makes Alexis give up the shield piece, and she yanks out a wall sconce. And okay, this is making me question, how big is this breastplate? Because 1/3 of it you can apparently stick in the hole behind the wall sconce, along with her father's journal.
Yeah, so we can only assume that when it was broken, the pieces were really, really uneven.
or something like that. I'm just trying to imagine how you split a breastplate, which would have to go over you and cover your back, into 3 pieces. I'm putting way more thought into this than I should.
I mean, the righteous sure didn't. Why should we?
So they then go looking for the entrance to the tomb, only to find that Rooker and his men are already there, and digging hurriedly with explosives and bulldozers. So this is kind of, once again, a bit that sort of made it into the movie. And after a brief cutaway to Rooker being informed that Alexis and Lara have arrived in Rabat, and tells his right-hand man Stavros to take care of it, we go back to Lara, who points out that they have time to get around Rooker, as his people have dug below the water table and flooded the dig site. And they go to find a back way in. There's this weird scene where she's like holding up her hands and going, imagine what this place looked like in ancient times. And they just have like ancient times vision now while they look through her hands.
For some reason. I mean, I guess they were hoping that the CGI of late 90s would have helped them somehow. It wouldn't have, but...
They're trying to do like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes thing where like he imagines all the stuff around him.
Possibly. I mean,
that's the closest.
But...
That's the closest comparison I can make.
Yeah, you're stupid.
And she talks about how this would have been the end of the Greek trade routes in this direction, and that's actually not far off, because the Greeks were using the Phoenician trade routes, and they made it as far as Spain eventually, so this isn't too far off from the truth. And talk about how a garrison arrived to build the tomb, and the soldiers would have been sealed in alive, but the officers would have constructed an escape route for themselves. That's funny to me. We gotta save the officers. And it would have led to the local brothel.
Of course.
That I actually do find some of this script to be kind of funny, legitimately so. But they find the site where the brothel once stood, and they find out that it's now the U.S. Embassy. I'm like, is that a political statement?
Yeah, it's a bit... I mean, they probably didn't mean anything too deep with it, but at the same time, there's something here. Something we probably shouldn't be sticking our noses into now.
It's like the Steven Seagal movie, where the one he directed himself, by the way, and wrote, or helped write, where one of the characters calls him, "You're nothing but a whore." He says, "For $100,000, I'd fuck anything once." I'm like, okay, you're telling us a lot about yourself.
Yeah, explains a lot about his career too.
Oh, and it's okay. So, needing a way to sneak in, Lara notices that a party is being set up, and she bumps into an embassy staff assistant and basically uses her looks to kind of distract him as she lifts his invitation to the ambassador's birthday party, which he's supposed to be giving to some other ambassador, I think. And she goes and buys a fancy dress and heels, which she has sent to their hotel, and meets with Alexis in the street, where she sees him arguing with Ilsa, who walks away as soon as Lara approaches, but he brushes it off, saying that she's just a pushy tourist. And so Alexis then gets grabbed and carried off by 3 men disguised as women, and we get a scene that's basically the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where Marion gets kidnapped and they run through the bazaar. It's basically that.
Basically that, yeah. I mean, it's not very creative, and it doesn't actually do much. It's just there to pad out the running time, I think.
Pretty much. And so she almost loses them in the bazaar, but catches one of them about to pull a gun and gets him to say where they took Alexis, and he points out a truck that's driving off, and Lara sees some camels and a motorcycle, and for some reason she steals a camel to chase after the truck. And I'm like, subverted our expectations, I guess?
Congrats, I guess.
It's an odd choice. But Stavros is in the back of the truck with Alexis, basically bitch-slapping him, and Alexis is being kind of a pussy here, which makes no sense later, and trying to make him give up the shield piece. And Lara, what were you gonna say? But she lides up on the camel and shoots out the truck's tires, causing it to crash into a wrecking yard. And so they flee deeper into the yard, climbing up a pile of tires that they collapse onto Stavros and his men, and they escape by hiding inside a giant monster truck tire as it rolls out of the yard. And I'm like, this is the wrong kind of action sequence for this movie.
Yeah, and it feels like Mythbusters have probably done an episode on why riding in a tire like that probably isn't good. But I, for the life of me, don't remember if I've ever seen that episode.
But it sounds like something they would cover if a movie actually did it.
Yeah, and this just, I don't know, it sounds weirdly slapsticky, I guess, in a way.
I mean, the giant pile of tires falling over could almost be a Three Stooges scene.
Yeah, but then they escape in a tire, and it's like... I mean, it is an action sequence, but it feels like it's really out of place in this movie.
I mean, there's a distinct... I mean, the action sequences, because, I mean, so far we've got, like, I mean, the kind of Indiana Jones-ish kind of action you would expect from a Tomb Raider movie. We've gotten, instead, robbing a casino and rolling around in a tire.
Yeah, this is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull's level of writing.
Except that's better.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so that night, they get ready for the party, and we get a bit where Laura says she was only ever afraid once when a barn bat chased her as a child, but she got over it. And then we get a scene where Alexis kind of becomes a different character, and he hands Laura an Ankh on a chain as a gift, and is kind of flirting with her, trying to seduce her, recounting the courtship of Achilles' parents with all the shape-shifting, and this is actually a real myth, so research was done. Credit where credit's due.
Good on them, for once.
And that whole scene is going to get really creepy later on, because there's something that I don't think they picked up on when they were writing this.
Yeah, there's another thing coming up that's going to get real awkward too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of awkward in this script.
There is, yeah.
And so she turns him down, and they leave, with Ilsa entering the hotel behind them as they go. And so they arrive at the embassy, with Laura telling Alexis to meet her at a side service entrance in 15 minutes, and she intends to head there right away, but gets pulled into dancing with the Pasha, an irritating fat 12-year-old with a crush on Laura because he met her once before when she was working to retrieve an item for his parents. And so they're dancing, and he tells the band, he says, play something good, Limp Bizkit or Snoop.
There's a pain in my soul.
Which is only gonna get worse.
It's only gonna get worse. We're less than 50 pages in, and I hurt. I hurt in my soul.
He's not buying bread. The bread represents his soul. Had to do it. But no, they're dancing, and she notices Rooker, who is talking to a man the Pasha identifies as the Greek ambassador. And so Lara stomps on his foot and heads off to meet Alexis. Also, he basically is proposing marriage to her the whole time, which is kind of funny.
Funny? Also cringy?
It's cringy, but I mean, it's funnier than most of the humor in this script.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's funnier than... It's funnier than the whole "you watch too much MTV, Tommy" line that she says to him.
Yeah. Oh, God.
But she heads off to meet Alexis, who had to hide in a dumpster to avoid getting caught by the Marines guarding the embassy. So he is basically a comedy sidekick at this point.
Yeah, which is... would this be characterization number 2? Because if the first one was mild-mannered guy, then it comedic relief, and then there's a third one coming up.
Mild-mannered guy who gets bitch slapped.
Yeah.
Comic relief, and then frustrated. No, it was mild-mannered guy gets bitch slapped. It was suave, seductive dude, and now he's the comic relief sidekick. So we're on 3 now.
Yeah, well done, guys. Great consistency.
And so they head to the wine cellar, and Lara uses a lockpick she has hidden in her braid to get in. So I guess she has one of those avatar braids.
Possibly.
And she changes back into her regular clothes along with a pair of guns. And he's like, guns? Do we really need those?
I'm more interested in knowing where the fuck she smuggled in the guns, the gloves, the gear, the goddamn combat boots.
Yeah, I maybe missed that detail because, once again, I tend to read this late at night. But
yeah, it's like either they were there before, which no one is explaining how they got there, or she somehow managed to cram them either in her clutch, assuming she has a clutch, down her cleavage, which probably would fit them, honestly, or up her cooch.
Well,
probably wouldn't.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past these guys to use the Victoria's Secret compartment trope.
Yeah, I mean, in games, it's excusable in a way because it's a game. This is supposed to be a movie.
In a game where she reloads her guns with her ass.
Yeah.
But okay.
I mean, but the switch of clothing and the that's better comment about it, that's something you might actually find in a game. So good on them. But it's not prepared for enough to actually, gel well with everything going on.
Okay, so they knock down part of the wall, finding a booby-trapped stone tunnel that leads to the back door into the tomb they were looking for. And they follow the tunnel, and they have to swim through eel-infested water to find the entrance, and Alexis gets swarmed by the eels and accidentally sets off the trap, so he's firmly ensconced in comic relief territory. And they swim up and inside the tomb, and they come in, and Lara's like, we're in the throne room. And she goes like, no, the other one, and they're coming up through the toilets.
Yeah, and here's the thing that's going to get really awkward later, because while they're swimming underwater, Alexis get out of breath, so Lara grabbed him and puts her mouth to his and blows in air.
God, I've seen that in so many scripts now, and it's always dumb.
Yeah.
But it gets worse later.
It gets worse later, yeah, but now it means that Lara had less air to work with than previously.
Yeah, I guess so. And they slide through a booby-trapped chute, and they find themselves on a ledge overlooking the tomb with several archways with symbols of different plagues above them, and the chalice on like a little platform in the center. And she climbs down using her climbing equipment, just as Rooker and his men break in through the door. And she struggles with Stavros over the chalice, and Alexis breaks it up by pulling an Uzi out of his bag that he's been carrying with them, and she actually says, "Why is this bag so heavy?" at one point. He goes like, "Hey, I just brought survival equipment with me." And he shoots the ground, and Stavros responds that the chalice belongs to the Greek people, not a pathetic traitor like him, and then he guns him down in cold blood, and threatens to do the same to everyone else in the room if Lara doesn't toss him the chalice. So now he's just a bad guy.
Yeah, and this is the fourth characterization.
And he's a badass now, too. He went from being a total pussy to this.
Yeah, I mean, if it is just an act before, then kudos on him. Get him an Oscar, whatever. But it's like, it's weird.
Him getting bitch slapped in the back of the truck would be his Oscar clip.
Yeah.
And so Lara goes to climb up with him, and like, she's like hanging from the ledge or something, and he tries to drag her up with him, and she doesn't want to go, so he drops her and cuts the rope or something like that, so she's down in the tomb, and he flees back through the tunnel, and the platform the chalice was on sinks down into the floor, and the room fills with a mist as the gate closes, and Rooker tries to hold it open like he's, Zangief in the Street Fighter movie? But gets trapped outside, and Lara, looking for a way out, wanders into the plague arch with a bat statue over it. Dun dun dun. And we then see Alexis sneaking back out the service entrance to the embassy, and he almost gets caught by some Marine guards, but then one of them gets garroted with a silver garrote, and it turns out it was Ilsa. And apparently these two are a couple of some kind, but he doesn't seem terribly interested in her.
Which is, you kind of saw it coming, kinda.
Yeah, but their relationship is very odd in this. I don't really get it.
I don't know. Maybe he gives good dick.
Maybe.
I mean, it's probably the only reason she'd be with him, I think, because it's not like he's a very good conversationalist or a good personality.
No, he's not. He whines a lot, too, even after he becomes a bad guy.
Yeah, so we're just going to have to assume that he's just really good at fucking.
Oh, and there's a wonderful line of dialogue here, too, where she says, "You're late," and he says, "Don't bitch, I just had to swim through Plato's poop." I mean, if this were a different movie, that line might work, but this isn't that kind of comedy.
Yeah, this isn't a comedy, period.
Yeah, it's very, very dumb, but she also has, the garroting thing, that reveals that she was the one who killed Wingard, and she also produces the shield piece from the hotel as well as the journal, so she went in and got those. And so we go back into the tomb, where Lara wanders through the mist, which clears, revealing an Escher-like maze where Rooker's men are being consumed by these apparently supernatural forces, like rats bursting out of their stomach, etc., before falling up into the spikes on the ceiling because gravity is weird and doesn't work right here. And Lara runs away, and she defies gravity by running up a wall away from some bats that burst from a man's head, so that's, the bat thing getting paid off. She then notices that the mist is entering through a vent and deduces that they've been inhaling hallucinogenic spores. So she pulls a lever to close the vent, and she uses her willpower to turn the bats into butterflies before they disappear, and the maze assumes its real shape of a spike pit at the bottom, and she is the only survivor.
Yeah, though I think it would probably take a bit longer for these spores to clear out than just a few seconds.
Yeah, you'd probably need a detox, too.
Yeah, but what do we know?
I mean, it's a pretty decent sequence, but it's not as good as it could have been.
Yeah, true.
And it's kind of like, oh hey, we've got our Scarecrow level from Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the outline, Lara and Theo, they're trapped together in the tomb, and they team up from this point. And also, there's a certain scene that's later in this script that is appended to the tomb sequence. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So Lara climbs up out of the tomb and back into the embassy's wine cellar, where she's surrounded by Marines and Moroccan cops and arrested. And the next day, and that's very very the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he climbs out and then there's people pointing bows at him. They do this twice, actually, in this script.
So I guess we can figure out what they were watching while writing this.
Oh, yeah. And the next day, Rooker meets her in jail, where he reveals that he's working for a NATO task force that helps nations reclaim their stolen artifacts, and he's also, I think he said he was in the Air Force at one point. And he tells her that Alexis is a con man and the black marketeer, and that he was an archaeologist working for the Greek government at one point, but he went rogue. And then Lara tells Rooker that Alexis is heading to Ladakh in Kashmir, India, and we learn that Lara is to be let out of jail, but is to be escorted to the next plane back to London.
Which is obviously going to end well.
And so Lara's escort takes her back to her hotel to pack her things, and the sergeant holding the room key and her passport when she insists on going into the room alone. And she finds that the shield piece and her father's journal have been taken, and momentarily feels defeated. But it actually says she sits down on the bed, violated. And I'm like, really?
That's a bit of a grandiose term to describe what's happened.
You know, as the Joker would say, very poor choice of words.
Yeah.
And she calls up Powell and warns him about Alexis and says that she's headed for Kashmir despite the warnings. And we also see during the conversation that he has a coughing fit, and the audience sees that he coughs up blood, but of course Lara doesn't know about this. And after she hangs up, Lara takes her hammock apart and uses it as a rope to reach the roof and escape. And suddenly she's in Kashmir, because apparently losing her passport wasn't that big of a problem.
Apparently.
And we go straight to Kashmir, where Lara is wowing an ancient monk with her recreation of the shield in Adobe Illustrator, because product placement?
I guess. I mean, were they going to be a sponsor for the movie, or...
Or were they just going weird technological and up-to-date like they were with the VR glasses?
Yeah, it doesn't date the script at all.
Well, I mean, we still have Illustrator.
Yeah, but still, it's like, there are better programs available, I think.
I was going to say, you're the artist here, you would know.
Yeah, so it's like, probably a thing at the time, but Sweet Lady Progress marches ever onward.
And he warns her about the danger inherent in seeking the shield, and then reveals that Lara's parents had visited him years before. And he tells her she should look for the next piece at the Temple of the Winds, and he interprets the inscription on the recreation high on the Ushkur Plateau before he has to leave feeling fatigued. And then a novice monk who was on hand tells her that a young man and woman who are obviously Alexis and Ilsa had visited the old monk as well that morning with the real shield piece with them. Now, I gotta talk about the locations they mentioned here, because I tried looking some of them up and they don't exactly match up with any real places.
Okay.
Like, there is a Ladakhshan, I think, but it's not in Kashmir, and the Ushkur Plateau isn't really a thing, and this thing they talked about with the winds I wasn't able to find anything on.
Yeah, I think the pass... The way they describe it would be difficult to achieve, I think. Like, I can get a pass with heavy wind flow through it, yeah, but the way they describe this one is that it's basically like a localized hurricane, a never-ending hurricane at that.
And it's a confluence of 4 wind streams or something?
Something like that, yeah. It's like, I get what they're going for, but they're ignoring, like, a good half of the known laws of physics to make it happen.
Okay, and so we go to Alexis's camp where he and Ilsa, they're discussing Croft's journal and are initially confused by the directions he gives towards the temple, as there appears to be no sign of any buildings at all in that location. And they talk about how, like, the only thing unusual about the place is that it's the crossing point of 4 different wind currents. And Alexis then deduces that the temple must be hidden underground somewhere, and oh boy.
Yeah.
Lara approaches the camp. She drives up in a Jeep, but she approaches dressed all in black with her VR glasses on, which are just working like night vision goggles at this point. And we get the Lara's sabotage montage set to, and I didn't look up if this was a real thing or not, but the Limp Bizkit cover of Sunglasses at Night.
Get it? Because her VR shades are sunglasses. Ha 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 ha.
I think the Limp Bizkit part is worse than that.
Yeah, no, they're both stupid, but I can't believe Limp Bizkit was ever a thing. Why was it a thing?
Because we were all just rolling back in 1999, I guess.
Fuck you, dude. Fuck you.
Okay, I can't. I compose myself after that one. God, I feel dirty. But she goes around sabotaging the trucks and other equipment, and she ends up fighting Ilsa and punches her out cold before sabotaging and blowing up the armory tent, which draws most of the camp out of their tents. And I'm like, they've been building up Ilsa as like this super tough chick, and then she gets taken out in like 5 seconds flat.
Yeah, but it's weird because it's described as Ilsa putting a knife to Lara's throat, and the way Lara gets out of it is to kick the knife up and into Ilsa's hand, I assume. Like, how would that work?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, the only direction in the script is Lara kicks the knife up and into her own hand. I have to assume that means Ilsa's hand, because otherwise that would be the dumbest fucking move.
I can't even picture it. I guess she's just very flexible.
Apparently.
But okay, let's move on.
Yeah, we have to. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Yeah, Lara, she uses the distraction to sneak into Alexis's tent, where she snatches up the 2 shield pieces in her father's journal, but gets held at gunpoint by this mercenary named Marden, who brags on and on about how I'm not going to waste time, I'm just going to shoot you in the head. But he gets shot himself in the head by Rooker, and they escape together.
Yay.
And so Alexis and Ilsa, they regroup, and they're in his tent, and he's going like, who could have done this? And they actually copy themselves here, and they have Ilsa say, take one goddamn guess, which is a line from Face Off. It's a Nicolas Cage line when he doesn't have his face. I'm like, come on, use a different line.
Yeah, I mean, okay, at least they're, plagiarizing themselves. Come on.
And so he spots, Lara and Rooker fleeing in Lara's Jeep because apparently his car was too shitty for her, which was weird.
Okay.
And he offers his men triple wages when they capture Marden's killer, which we never find out if he makes good on that or not.
Probably not. He is a villain after all.
And he's not layered like Darius was.
No, he's the kind of villain who goes into the bathroom, gets out and doesn't wash his hands because he's evil.
He's the guy who keeps touching your face.
Yeah.
And so Rooker, as they're driving, he tells Lara that he's been suspended pending an investigation because he's now a cop, apparently, and is now working on his own. So they come to a crossroads, and they decide to finish the search for the 3rd shield piece. And I don't even know why they have this pretense of, we're going to make a choice. We can flee, or we can go get the 3rd piece, when she just decides, oh, we're going to go and do that anyways. So, that was kind of a pointless scene.
Yeah.
And so they head up to the plateau, and they're driving around boulders and dealing with the intense winds. And they eventually find a boulder situated in a spot which they call it like it's the eye of the storm, and there's no wind there. And so they go, oh, this must be it. And they climb up each side of it, and it's described as them almost getting intimately close when they reach the top. But then they find 2 pairs of handprints carved in the rock, and they use those to twist the boulder open and reveal a set of stairs. So, okay, this is not very good security.
No, not really.
And they climb down the stairs and they find that all the traps have already been sprung, meaning someone else has been there already. And he says, oh, you think it's Alexis? He goes like, no, I meant someone clever. And I'm like, you were complimenting his intelligence like 30 pages ago, woman.
Now she's just being spiteful.
Yep. And they continue on into the main temple, dedicated to multiple Greek gods, but they find that the chalice has already been broken and the shield piece taken. And then Lara finds a signet ring on the floor, which once belonged to her father. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Alexis and Ilsa, they're slowly driving their way up the plateau through the bad weather, and he's bitching all the way there. She's going like, hey, let's play a game and think of all the ways we can torture and kill her.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the game devs were listening in on that game, because Lara gets some really brutal deaths in the new games. Like, fuck me.
Oh, especially in 2013. But as that's going on, Lara tells Rooker that she thought her parents had disappeared in Nepal, and she knows that they had to have been here before they disappeared. They didn't lose the ring years ago because he was wearing it when he left on that trip. And they find a nearby village with a small landing strip where the husband and wife owners confirm that her parents did indeed land and take off from there. But it was the monsoon season, and there were rumors and stories of a plane crashing over the nearby Lake Dalmanar. So, the plot thickens.
Meanwhile, the band of absolutely genius mercenaries find that their car is leaking oil.
Yeah, they get to the temple, and Alexis is like, she got it already! And then his, mercenary pal is like, hey, we found that their Jeep is leaking oil, so we can track their trail. I'm like, why wouldn't that stuff blow away with the wind too, like the tire tracks?
Yeah, I mean, it would be covered at least.
Or do
like
they have special
oil stand?
Or do they have special VR goggles that can, pick up oil traces?
You know what, maybe. Fuck it. I don't care anymore. It's stupid and it's about to get stupider.
Yeah, so the pursuit continues, and then Lara and Rooker, they take a boat out on Lake Dalmanar, determining, what the plane's flight path would have been, and they locate the wrecked plane, and Lara dives down and in, and weirdly, they don't show this part.
Yeah.
She goes into the plane, and then it cuts to, they're sitting on a dock, and she's already surfaced, and she talks about how she saw the corpses, recognized them for who they were, and she retrieved the final shield piece.
Yeah.
That's a very odd and jarring way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'd assume that if this had actually, gone to production, they probably would have been able to do the scene fully or something.
But it just seems like a very weird choice to make.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there on the dock, and that's when Powell dramatically steps out from behind a tree, and it's revealed that he was in on Alexis's plots all along. Dun dun dun.
Because Alexis is his son.
We'll get to that.
Which would, yeah.
We're not quite at that reveal yet.
Yeah, no, we are.
Yeah, but it's in a little bit. Ilsa punches the two of them into unconsciousness, and they wake up staked out on a centipede mound. So we're at your favorite scene now. And it's like, and Ilsa is apparently super jealous of the fact that Alexis tried to seduce Lara, so she wants to kill them painfully. And Powell's talking about how they can only reforge the shield at Alexander's tomb on Olympus. And he tells Lara he wants the shield because he's dying and it can save his life. And this is also where he reveals that Alexis was his illegitimate son by his Greek lover. So that whole seduction scene is now super creepy because he's her cousin and he knows it.
Yeah, this is some fucking Alabama shit right here.
Some Silent Hill Revelation shit.
Yeah.
Where the writers didn't even realize the incest.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it wasn't intentional. I really do.
I mean, I think if it was intentional, they would have made more of it.
Probably, yeah.
Like, it would have been, played up as creepier than it is, because as it is, it's almost like because I think, him being her uncle was written in when they wrote out The Queen, so that they could have that familial and personal relationship there, instead of him just being the bad guy. But then they didn't fully revise the script to the point where it would make sense.
Probably, yeah.
So, okay, Alexis cuts Lara's braid off to keep her from accessing her lockpick, and so I'm getting some Shanghai Noon vibes here. And they leave. And as they leave, Ilsa shoots them out and disturbs the normally nocturnal centipedes, which they say they are bigger and more venomous than the African variety. And I did not look up to see if giant centipedes are actually native to Kashmir.
I have no idea, but probably not. I'm thinking the really big ones live in Asiatic regions, I think, because that's usually where I see, documentaries. I could be wrong. And there might be a passing bug expert in the comments somewhere who would tell us how it actually goes, but I don't think the really big ones live in that region.
But, aside from that, there are bigger problems with this scene.
And they're about to come up.
You're about to get your own little short film out of this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they start crawling all over the two of them, and Rooker actually wakes up after this has all happened, which is kind of funny. But they're crawling all over them, and one starts going up Rooker's pants, and he's starting to freak out, and then one goes into Lara's tank top, and it climbs out with its head peeking out through her cleavage, and then she crushes it to death with her tits. Why?
Yeah.
So go, get angry.
Yeah. Welcome to fucking Tits 101, everyone.
This is EpicCandle, and this is her tit talk.
Yeah. So, the script says that she flexes her chest muscles, her pecs contract, and she crushes the centipede between her tits. Now, there are muscles in the chest. Of course there are. We've all seen that video with that one lady who manages to move her boobs up and down by the strength of her muscles to the music. We've all seen that. That's a thing. However, tits are basically a sack of skin full of fat tissue. That's not how they work. If your boobs are big enough, you can, technically speaking, pick one up and crush something with it, because that's also a clip I've seen
on YouTube.
YouTube. That's a thing. You can do that if your boobs can actually take the goddamn damage.
If you're psychotic,
I can't do that.
If you're psychotic enough.
Yeah, but basically, no matter how hard you flex the muscles under your breast tissue, it doesn't really give you any sort of control over the breast tissue above it. So if she had her hands free and, gave it the goddamn centipede titty fuck or something, like pushed them together with her hands.
That's more or less what she does.
It is! If she had used her hands to push her boobs together and crush the plug that way, that would have been one thing, but it wouldn't have happened fast enough and it probably would have beat her. So this is pure fucking bullshit, and we're back to men writing women poorly the Reddit thread. Because this is not how boobs work, and I'm telling you this as an owner and operator of boob.
I defer to your expertise.
Yes, this is my expertise.
So, to sum up, in this script, Lara kills a giant centipede via Paizuri.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's just, who would find this sexy? Who would find a giant angry centipede between two tits getting crushed?
Who would even think of doing this in the first place? Because there's nothing this insane in Face Off, and that is saying quite a bit.
I don't know, but this is just like, this entire script is dumb. Believe me, this entire script is completely and utterly dumb. But this scene is so stupid, so off the wall, and it does not follow any sort of logic. It's like there's no reason for this other than cheap titillation, pun intended, and it still fails.
It's almost like they were just, because they knew Lara's tits were like the 90s equivalent of a meme, so they figured, we have to reference that somehow?
And this is what they came up with. Not a lovingly designed shot of her tit. Not her in a swimsuit, not her in a wetsuit.
Not a shower
Nothing
scene.
Like that. Or a shower scene, yeah. It's the titty fuck of death.
The movie is stupid too, because they decided they had to pad out. Yeah, they had to pad out Angelina Jolie's bra, who's not exactly small.
Yeah, but
this is a whole level of what the fuck.
Yeah, this is a whole new level, a whole new goddamn apartment block of what the fuck. Like, this is on the whole other side of town from padding Jolie's bra. This is just...
Okay, do you want me...
It killed this idiot to do some research. Like, I am begging you, go ask a woman you know how tit work. If you're lucky, she might let you, actually touch him to figure it out yourself. But go do fucking research.
And I just got flashbacks to the scene in Wild Wild West where Kevin Kline is showing off his fake disguised tits, and he's going, "Go ahead, touch them." And Will Smith changes the feeling and goes, "Now touch my breast." That movie's ridiculous. But to get back to the scene,
yeah, this is just keep in mind, everyone who don't actually, own a pair of tits. Just keep in mind, this is not how tits work, ever. They do not work like this. You can't, otherwise you would have several injuries in the ER relating to getting your dick, strangled between breasts on accident. Just,
And what makes it even worse is the reaction is Theo is rightfully looking on and just, what? And her response to that is, what, did you think they were just ornaments?
That's exactly what they fucking are, you idiot. Come on.
Unless they're implants, and they're centipede crushing implants.
Yeah, even then I promise, if the cup size is anything above A or double A, which I consider to be concave, but if it's anything above A, you're going to be wearing a really good high-strength sports bra if you're trying to raid tombs. I promise, they wouldn't be functioning so freely that the script claims they would.
Okay, so let's get back to the scene.
Fuck this script!
This is funny to talk about this, but we gotta keep going, because there's not that much left.
Coming to my goddamn TikTok.
But okay, so Rooker's got the one in his pants, and he's got a baby one that crawls up his nose and out his mouth, so apparently there were only 3 centipedes in this fucking mound.
Apparently.
And Lara undoes her bonds using the Ankh necklace that Alexis gave her somehow, and then she punches Rooker in the face to get rid of the little one, and then she kicks him in the nuts to kill the big one, and it cuts to like a wide angle over the woods of him going, ah!
Yeah.
Okay, this is now turned into a comedy.
Yeah, and the exchange goes, Lara asks, were you beaten? And Rooker in a falsetto goes, I have no idea. What movie are we in? What are we doing?
Okay, in the outline, the centipedes are millipedes, and they show up because they're surviving the Tomb of the Plagues together. They show up as they get into, like, the antechamber of the tomb, and they just randomly drop out of the ceiling like the snakes in Resident Evil.
Okay.
And in Kashmir, they just get tied up and left for dead, and Lara uses her braid lockpick to escape.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and this is how the outline describes the millipede scene. Let me see if I can find it. Tomb antechamber. Lara and Theo think they're safe until they are deluged by poisonous millipedes, and this pun is so bad, but you might like it. Lara has to think fast and use all her assets to save herself and Theo. And what makes this even...
But was there a millipede to the fuck of death?
That's what it sounds like. Assets. But I just noticed this, and this makes it even better, is the fact that it's just this scene is described as, it's labeled as scene 30A, which means it was added later.
Oh my god.
So they came up with this, and even though it's a completely superfluous addition to the Tomb of the Plagues, they apparently were so impressed with this scene that they kept it in the script and put it in a different place.
Okay, look. It's fine to like tits. I like tits, okay? I like boobs. I like looking at them.
Me too.
But this is stupid.
Yeah, everything you just said goes for me as well.
Yeah, nothing about this is in any way attractive.
So I take it your Blades in the Dark character will not be doing this.
You wish.
That's a reference nobody listening to this is going to understand, but...
Yeah, but it's just... Look, it's fine if you wanted to focus on the tits for a while. It's fine, I promise. We all get it. It's Lara Croft. But just, do it in a way that's actually, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing. Don't add fucking centipedes into the mix.
Okay. Yeah, we gotta move past the centipedes. I mean, they are a huge what the fuck distraction from the rest of the scene. Oh, wait. I gotta say, wouldn't the titty fuck make more sense as, like, I do not mean this as a pun, I swear to Christ, as the climax of the scene instead of the first centipede that gets killed?
I guess. I mean, it'd be stupid either way.
Oh, I'm not arguing that.
But then if it was the climax of the scene, then that would mean that Rooker would have had to free himself somehow.
We can't have that. We can't have him being useful.
No.
But, okay, so moving on. They rush to the airstrip, but they get there too late, just as Powell's jet takes off. And in an element that they borrowed from the previous draft, they end up taking a rickety old World War II era Dakota that's on hand, which Rooker manages to fly despite its decrepit state. And they somehow manage to fly this thing all the way to Mount Olympus.
Somehow, fuck it, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care. My mind has been crushed by the centipede scene. I don't fucking care anymore.
I didn't think it could get any worse either, but there's plenty of stuff that makes me angry coming up, so...
Oh, of course there are. What the fuck is up with this script?
So we go to Mount Olympus, where Powell, Alexis, Ilsa, and I think they have men with them, I'm not positive.
They may have some mercenaries, maybe.
But they all just kind of disappear.
Yeah, they're a non-issue. They just, I don't know, they get in, Lara leaps out of the plane, and... somewhere down there, I don't know, they gun down archaeologists and Greek soldiers. Yeah,
what's going on is that, they spot her flying in the plane overhead and they pick up the pace, and she sees there's a camp of archaeologists and I guess some soldiers outside the tomb, and she goes, oh, I can't wait for you to land the plane, I gotta jump out and warn them. So she jumps out in this old-ass parachute that falls apart on her, and she has to crash herself into a tree. Funny, we were just talking about that, to break her fall.
Yeah, and apparently she jumps because the radio on the plane doesn't work, so she can't radio down any warning. So that's why she jumps. So, I mean, okay, at least they tried.
Yeah, but Powell and company, they reach the tomb before her, and they execute everyone there except for one archaeologist, so completely pointless, Lara.
Yeah,
And they get him to hand over the spear, and they begin a ritual inside the tomb, which brings in St. Elmo's fire and brings the friezes. It starts bringing the friezes on the wall to life, which is this bizarre element they throw in here.
Yeah, because CGI. Oh, remember, all the centipedes would have been CGI.
Yeah.
Late 90s CGI.
Yes. And they probably would have had to CGI the boobs, too, now come to think of it, just to make that animation work.
Probably.
Where there would have been some really shitty clipping. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Centipede has activated no clip. But no, we're done with the centipedes. God
We're never
damn
fucking
it.
done with it.
We're done!
But we have to move on.
We got plenty of stupid shit to talk about.
Yeah.
So Alexis then kills the archaeologist and removes his heart, and he tosses it into the fountain of fire, which reignites it. And Lara arrives outside, takes the guns from a dead Greek soldier, and she looks at this Greek soldier she has never met before and is suddenly pissed like the guy just killed her dog. And so we're back inside the tomb, and Alexis places the shield pieces on the altar and asks Powell to use the spear to reforge them, but he gets second thoughts and goes, I don't know if I want to do this. And he is apparently dying on his feet here because he's just like almost falling over all the time.
Yeah.
And so Alexis just grabs the spear, does it himself, which makes it into one piece, but he apparently needs to strike it again to finalize the ritual. And it's like, and they keep calling this fucking thing a shield, even though it's not a shield. But okay, to finalize it, he needs to do to finalize the ritual, but Lara enters and shoots the spear out of his hand, and she says, it's over. IT_S over, because fuck, I forgot about that line earlier in the script when I was reading this, and then this came back.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. They're trying to do a callback or a funny or what the fuck ever. But do you think anyone else in that tomb is going to know what the fuck she's talking about?
No, and also, unless you're Shane Black, don't even try with the grammar humor. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just, what the fuck, guys?
Badly is an adverb. Who taught you grammar? But okay, so she shoots his pistol into the fountain, but then Ilsa fires on her, and she flees, and then Alexis grabs the spear, and he strikes the final blow, which fully reforges the shield and fully reanimates the wall freezes, and there's a surge of energy, which knocks out both Alexis and Powell, so they're just... And Lara almost gets sucked into the freeze by the warriors on it, only for Ilsa to attempt to use her garrote on her. And then Lara gets the upper hand and then tosses her into the freeze, where she becomes two-dimensional and is torn apart by the freeze warriors. And I'm like, when did this turn into Wishmaster? That's totally like a Wishmaster scene.
Yeah, but I mean, Alexis's last name is Tulin. That's like a letter away from Toulon.
Yeah, but Puppet Master never does anything quite like that, and I've seen all of those fucking movies, Jesus Christ.
That tells me more about you than a lot of things, actually.
I like to finish things once I start them, damn it. Which reminds me...
But were you ready to pay the price?
Which reminds me, there's still one Hellraiser movie and one Children of the Corn movie I haven't fucking seen. God damn it. But so, we go back to the script. And yeah. Powell comes back to consciousness and is crawling towards the shield like he's Chris Pratt in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and seeing his face reflected in its center. But then, cause there's this thing where it like reflects the face of whatever its chosen host is, which is strange and more bad 90s CGI. But the face changes to Alexis, who betrays his father and takes the shield for himself, becoming invulnerable, which is demonstrated when Lara fires at him and the bullets just bounce off. And they ricochet around like it's a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Probably with the noises, too.
And then ding, 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 ding. But then Powell crawls to Lara, and as he dies, he tells her to aim for the heels, just like Achilles, and hands her the spear, and he apparently just dies to die. Nothing actually kills him here. He's just dying on his feet.
Yeah, just dies. Bye.
And so it's then that Cerberus emerges from the fountain and attacks Lara. And so I got an outline note here in that it's in that Powell claims the shield, which forms as a mask. So yet again, it's not fucking shield. And he sacrifices Darius to Cerberus, and then Rooker shows up and helps Lara fight Powell, who resurrects Alexander's army and says even possibly Alexander himself. So there's like zombies and shit.
Oh boy.
I mean, it doesn't really matter who becomes the villain here, but at least it sounds like there's a fight in that version as opposed to what happens here. Okay.
Yeah, but in here there are no zombies, so...
Yeah, instead we just get fucking Fluffy.
Yeah, Fluffy the Terrible.
So Lara beheads all 3 of Cerberus's heads, only for 3 more to grow from each stump, and then the severed heads start growing new bodies, and that's the Hydra, not fucking Cerberus. God damn it.
There's the 3 decapitated heads sprout little devil puppy bodies, so it's like a huge head with a really tiny body at the end of the neck.
It's like the dog woman from Mars Attacks.
Yeah. Fuck.
And during this whole thing, Alexis is somewhere and he's narrating, like screaming at her, doing like villain speeches and stuff. But she gets pinned between the two of them because the 9-head Cerberus is here and Alexis is sneaking up on her from behind. But Lara is watching his reflection in the spear tip, which I guess is them shouting out the Clash of the Titans with the inside of the shield. And Medusa, I suppose.
I guess.
Wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
The remake is better than this. Which really isn't saying much.
Yeah. Although now the Cerberus is 9-headed Cerberus.
Yeah, it's a 9-head. I did mention that.
Fucking 9-headed Cerberus. Fuck.
Because they think it's the goddamn Hydra.
It's like they did and didn't do anything as far as research goes.
Yeah, and so she successfully performs the inverted backflip that she was always fucking up earlier, and she lands behind Alexis and stabs him in the heels with the spear. And then she uses the spear to crack open the shield just enough to stab Alexis and rip the shield off his body, and then the Cerberus horde descends on him and eats him. Poetic justice? And it just makes you think, this script, really does Alexander the Great dirty. It performs it as a human sacrificing guy who feeds people to a giant dog, which is just kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
One of the greatest generals and world leaders in history is a psychopathic madman, but I should have talked about that at the beginning instead of now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still a valid point.
But then she starts looking at the shield and, forms her face, and then it's playing its temptation game with her. And the Cerberuses even start bowing, which is just amazing. But
stupidly.
It's so funny. But she then hits it again with a spear and shatters it back into 3 pieces, and the dogs are like, and get sucked back down into the fountain. The Friezes stop moving, and they're like, oh no, we killed the only woman we had. And the whole place starts to shake and collapse, and so Lara flees. She escapes the collapsing ruin just in time, only to come face to face with the Greek army, so they do that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark again. She sees Rooker waiting in the crowd, and then passes out. And it then fades to a small ceremony where Lara and Rooker are congratulated by the Greek Minister of Antiquities, and the 3 shield pieces are taken, and they're locked away in steel cases or handcuffed to 3 different soldiers who exit in 3 different directions. And I'm like, they're not taking these back to the original locations, are they?
Yeah, you kind of hope that they're actually, putting them into different museums in different corners of the world.
Or putting them into the vault.
Or something, but, it didn't actually work that well last time.
Yeah. And they also say, next time, come back as tourists. That's not a good joke. And we then go to the airport where the script actually does something kind of clever, because Lara offers to visit the U.S. and look Rooker up, but then they're met by his wife and daughter. And we get the final reprise of the, you're not gay, you're not a sexist pig, and you're not a phony. Oh, wait, and then the wife and kids show up. and he leaves with them, and I actually think that's kind of a decent twist, because you think they're gonna do the generic thing and make him into a love interest, but then they don't. I
mean, yeah, it's at least something, but it's like one single gold nugget in a huge pile of shit. It wasn't worth it, is what I'm saying. It wasn't worth reading through everything to come to this.
What you really are saying is that it wasn't worth the centipedes.
It wasn't. It really fucking wasn't.
But hey, you got to go on a tit talk.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
I'm probably the only one annoyed.
And also, that's something which they kind of sort of lifted from the D'Souza script, because in that there's a guy who you think is a good guy and he's kind of a love interest, but then he turns into a bad guy, and there's another guy who you think he's gonna be the love interest again. He's gonna be the good guy love interest, but then at the end they're getting picked up by a helicopter. He says, "Croft, do me a favor, lose my number." Which was kind of funny, one of the better parts of that script. But okay, so we go to the Croft Mausoleum, where Lara's parents are interred in their new vault, and I know you love this part, Amazing Grace is being played on bagpipes.
Fucking, what is it with Amazing Grace? Why is it everywhere? Why is it always played in funerals? What is the obsession with fucking Amazing Grace?
I'm gonna have to deliberately pick movies that have Amazing Grace in them now for the movie club.
Fuck you, dude. Fuck you with a garden rake.
Ow! Hopefully the other end. And even that.
An Amazing Grace on fucking bagpipes. No less.
I don't know. You can look up the history of it and see if this is based on reality if you want to.
No, I don't have to, because it's everywhere. It's in fucking TV shows. It's in fucking movies. It's in the script. Everywhere there's amazing grace when you have to squeeze a few tears out of the fucking audience.
And on bagpipes.
Yeah. It's like, is this an American thing? Is this an Anglophone thing? Just, what is this? Why is it always this one song?
And yes, and now Lara has the corpses right where she can get to them. Ooh.
Yeah.
But, okay, so Rosalind is at the funeral, and she actually tries to set her up with another man at a funeral.
Classy.
I'm like, oh no, it's Will Ferrell from Wedding Crashers. But then, and Hillary is like, oh no, she's going to go on a vacation now. And she's like, yes, I'm going on a proper vacation, no adventure, no nothing. And we get a little ending stinger where she's diving in the Straits of Oman, and she sees a school of sharks swimming down to a sunken ruin and decides to head down there, and that's where it ends.
Fuck the script.
I mean, that's a better, like, sequel hook ending than her going to fight the robot again and a very 2001 song starts playing.
I mean, I guess, but it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth going through the goddamn centipede titty fuck. It wasn't worth it.
Again, centipede titty fuck. If this show was more popular, that would be a meme.
It's just...
But you suffered for a good cause, at least. This will entertain at least 123 people.
Yay! It's like, I beg of you, script writers, if anyone who listens to this is a script writer, I beg of you, do your research. Ask some nice lady if you can fondle her tit, if you have to. Search.
If you need to, find a hooker.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen worse. I've seen a man in writing describe that the reason why women take so long in the bathroom is because their urinary tract is a labyrinth, and it just takes so long for the urine to come out when they try to pee. Oh, I've also seen someone describe that the female undercarriage is like a cloaca. Like, everything comes out of one hole, everything.
Okay,
So
in terms of too much information.
Like, there's a certain level of understanding you'd have to be able to, go fiddle down there as a man, I'd hope. Like, you know how there's a minimum height you need to have to take a ride in an amusement park. There's a minimum level of knowledge you'd have to have about the vagina to have access to a vagina.
There are many fine anatomy books you can find.
Yeah, but it's not like these people read. They don't do research because somehow they have confused the Cerberus with the fucking Hydra.
And they somehow confused a shield with a goddamn breastplate.
Yes.
I guess because I just wanted to squeeze an extra use of the word breast in there somewhere.
Yeah, but I mean, breastplate of Achilles doesn't have quite the same sound as shield of Achilles.
I mean, you could always say the...
sing, it doesn't dance.
Well, neither does the shield. It was just used as a...
apparently.
Yeah, but the shield just worked as a hang glider.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the real question of this episode. Would you consider either of these scripts better than the first movie?
I have to say no, actually. Even though the first one was tolerable, I still kind of prefer the movie we got instead of either of these.
I mean, I definitely prefer the first script to the movie because at least it's coherent.
True.
And yeah, and this one, no, it's not better. It's more coherent, but it's worse.
Yeah, it's like one step forward, two steps back. It's more coherent, but it's like a fucking monkey paw wish. Okay, the script is now more coherent, but there's a centipede titty fuck, the breastplate is a shield, the shield is a breastplate, the Cerberus is a Hydra. Like, fuck you.
And Hades is Satan.
Apparently.
And there's even a moment in when Alexander is dying where he says, Hades, why have you forsaken me? I'm like, you're confusing your mythologies, dude.
Just a little bit. And apparently Hades is a smith as well. Too bad the Greek mythology didn't have like a specific guy for the blacksmithing stuff.
Yeah.
Too bad.
And
because he would have fit in here.
And, the bloodthirsty, warmongering asshole god was a different guy, too.
Yeah. And, well, this is, 300 years before Alexander the Great actually existed?
It's about 309 years off from his actual date of death.
Yeah.
So,
it's like...
Yeah. That was me reading this script. I'm like, I remembered it not being good, but I didn't remember getting pissed off by every little detail.
Yeah, and I'd like to know, you had to be reminded of the goddamn Limp Bizkit cover twice because you kept forgetting. It's like your brain did its very best to expunge that knowledge out of your head. It's so traumatic that you forgot it twice and had to be reminded of it.
I might have to take a screenshot of the titty fuck and just put it on my Twitter. But yeah, to sum up, what happened with this script is that they turned it in, and then Stephen Herrick promptly left the director's chair. I don't know if it was because of this script or not, but he left and decided to go make Rockstar with our upcoming Victor Sullivan, Mark Wahlberg. So he went off to make that movie, and Paramount was left without a director, and then they realized that Simon West, who had just done a film with them, he owed them another film because he was working on a film version of The Prisoner for Paramount, which fell apart. Contractually, he owed them a film, so they kind of forced him to do this. And he essentially threw out the previous scripts and cobbled together his own plot from scratch, essentially.
Okay.
And he says, and he talks about, like, he mentioned, he's definitely talking about this script where he says, the old drafts had a lot of Mary Poppins representations of England, he told Premiere. It was fairly horrendous. I said, look, I want to change everything but the title and the character.
But I mean, if you don't have an establishing shot of the Big Ben, how do you know you're in good old London town?
And he also mentions, one of them had scenes of people visiting the Queen and drinking tea. It was a tragedy waiting to happen.
This script was a tragedy. The entirety of it. With or without the Queen scene. It's just, fuck.
Yeah. But yeah, he cobbled together his own script, and so he has an adaptation by credit, which basically is, we know you deserve credit on this movie for writing, but the Guild doesn't want to give you a full screenplay credit or a story credit, so they give you that. That's basically a bullshit credit.
Okay.
And there's a few people who went uncredited who actually whipped his script into shape, including Leda Calligridis of Avatar and Alita Battle Angel and Brandon Braga of Star Trek Voyager and Mission Impossible 2.
Ouch.
So they didn't get any credit for their work, and so that's how the movie ended up happening. Simon West looked at this script and went, the Queen? Fuck no. Whereas you probably would have rolled your eyes at the Queen and then went, centipede, fucking titty, fuck, shit.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you had to take a scene out or rework it, it probably would have been the centipede titty fuck. Like,
you can have them get swarmed by centipedes and deal with them. Just don't do that.
Yeah, like, I get it. Centipedes can be, venomous. So, yeah, I get it. It's a tough situation, but fuck.
Centipedes are creepy, too. I once had a little one crawl on my shoulder, and it freaked me out.
Yeah, I mean, the scene would have been, stressful enough without the sudden titty fuck of death out of nowhere.
But, okay, we've talked enough about the titty fuck of death.
I am never letting the titty fuck go.
Yes, that will be just a running gag in every episode we do together. Where does this land on the titty fuck of death scale?
Pretty much. It has to, because it's like,
Would you consider this the worst script you've read for this show so far?
So far, but I'm sure you can try and top it sometime later.
Well, there's always Devil May Cry. And with that, we're going to leave it off.
We're going to have to. Otherwise, we'll be talking about the goddamn titty fuck for the next 3 hours.
All right. So, with that tease of possible rage to come and yet more mentions of that goddamn centipede, we're going to say goodnight. So, hope you enjoyed this very, very strange episode. And until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.